The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Ryan K, Melissa S, Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Matt aka Stormageddon, Pib Extra, Gilmer, Stephen P, and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, Shmeh. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I am your host, Josh Koval, and today's episode, we are diving back into, kind of pun intended, we're diving into a Zelda game, and it's been a long time since I've covered a Zelda game. I think the last one I covered was Link to the Past, or I want to say like 2 years ago. And, you know, it's been a while since I've last done one, and I decided to I decided to reach out to a new friend that I met through Instagram, and this person is a huge Zelda fan. So when I was thinking about doing a new Zelda game, a new Zelda episode, I had to reach out to this individual right here. Joining me for the first time on the Still Loading podcast is Supertendo. Tendo, how are you doing today?
Hey man, what's going on? I'm glad to be here, and I'm doing great, and I'm ready to talk some Zelda.
Hell yeah, I've been looking forward to this, man. I would consider myself a slightly above casual Zelda fan. I enjoy the Zelda series quite a bit, but I don't set aside as much time to play it as other people do. So this is why I had to bring you on, though, someone who is a giant fan of the series, who can cover the bases that I'm gonna miss. So I've been looking forward to this episode, been looking forward to having you on. And before we go any further, before we dive into the waters of Wind Waker, I guess I should say what we're talking about: the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. And if you couldn't tell by the title, we're talking Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. And before we dive into the waters of Wind Waker, I want to know a little bit more about your personal Zelda history. Like, how did you kind of first get into Zelda? And then after you're done talking about that, feel free to talk about your personal experiences with Wind Waker.
So I got into Zelda when I was a kid. I think I was either 8 or 9 years old, and I saw the games at Blockbuster on NES, Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, and I was like, man, what the heck are these? So my first game was Super Mario Bros. On the NES. So I'm used to kind of the games where you're just going left and right, you're jumping, you're collecting stuff. So when I would see Zelda as a kid, I'm like, this isn't for me. You know, I was into like this whole fantasy medieval kind of thing or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I remember like there was also the cartoon on NBC that was with the Mario Brothers Super Show. And I was like, well, excuse me, princess.
Dude, I'm going to have to get you on. So my buddy Dexter and I, we do a monthly show where we cover one video game cartoon in depth. We did the entirety of the Captain N series. We went it episode by episode, one episode a month. And now we're doing Super Mario Super Show and the Legend of Zelda cartoon. And we're alternating them. So we just recorded, it might be out by the time this episode comes out. I think it will be Mario episode 8, which the next one's going to be the Legend of Zelda cartoon episode 8. So if you ever want to gush about Super Show or the Legend of Zelda cartoon, let me know, because we'd love to have you back.
Oh, definitely, dude. I would be interested, man, because I didn't really watch Zelda because, like I said, back then, but I watched, the Mario Brothers Super Show with Captain Lou. What was it? Captain Lou
Lou Albano.
And that one, Mario 3, and then, of course, the Mario World cartoon with Yoshi. And, those were all really interesting cartoons. So, but yeah, back to the question at hand. So my friend at the time, he let me borrow a Link to the Past on the SNES. And I had no idea, like, what I was getting myself into. All I know was that he let me borrow the SNES cartridge. I took it home, plugged it into my SNES, made a new file, and I'm like, whoa, this game is like one of the coolest games I've ever played. And his dad was really big on RPGs, so he had every RPG on the SNES, so like Final
Okay.
Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore, so on and so on. But A Link to the Past was interesting because at the time I was a little bit intimidated by role playing games. I didn't know what to really expect. So when I hopped into Link to the Past, I'm like, oh, cool, it's an adventure game. You know, there's a guy in green with a sword and you collecting stuff. And then one thing led to another. And then I'm waking up 2 hours, an hour or so before it's time for me to go to school, and I'm playing. And then, I would just play forever. And then I think, when I got to the dark world for the first time, I'm like, holy crap, there's like another world in this game. Like, what is going on here? But I just remember just being so intrigued by like the mystery and the
Mm-hmm.
exploration and everything, and just like all the little like subtle hints when it came to like figuring out where to go and finding all the secret stuff. And like, man, it blew my mind. And then that was my first Zelda experience, man. And it was a damn good one. And from there, I think I played Link's Awakening after that, on the Game Boy Color.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh, the DX one then, because
yeah,
yeah, okay.
but at the time, I wasn't as huge into Zelda like I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I was more of like a Mario, Sonic, Donkey Kong Country kind of person. Basically just essentially platformers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, and then I started to play more games, expand my genres more, like to more RPGs and that kind of thing. Now I really appreciate these games a lot more as an adult. Even as a teenager, I played, stuff like Wind Waker or, Twilight Princess, the kind of thing. But now as an adult, I'm like, man, like these are really damn good games.
Mm-hmm. And that, so then you got into Wind Waker so then you just kind of the rest of the series from there. I get you. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
funny listening to your story. It kind of mirrors a little bit of my own, where I remember seeing. I might be a little bit younger than you. I was born in '89, and my first console was the N64. I could have gotten a SNES, but my parents were a little slow on getting me games until I was a little bit older. And I remember seeing, though, kind of like the same reaction you had with Zelda I did, where I was kind of like, man, what is this? Like, it doesn't look. Specifically, it's not even like I grew up on the NES, so you could see like the gold cartridge, which would have been like really appealing to me when I was younger. But as an adult, all I saw was the Ocarina of Time box, which is let's be honest, it's a boring as shit box. Like it is just a matte gold with a fancy sword on it, and it says Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and all being like 10 or 11 when I actually saw those in Blockbuster. um it might as well just been like just saying Gandalf, Gandalf, Gandalf over and over. Like it didn't mean anything to me. And similarly to you, where when you finally sat down and were like, okay, let me just try this, right? I didn't like it based off of the other stuff I saw or heard. Let me at least try it here. And I tried it. I got hooked on Ocarina, and that was my kind of first foray into it. And with Wind Waker, at least for me, I had another similarly negative reaction when I first saw it, because I was one of those snobs where it was like, but why is it so cartoonish? What Zelda looks so
Hmm.
gritty and realistic. And now as an adult, I'm like, man, give me more of this cartoon stuff. Like I love how Wind Waker looks. And to get into a little bit of the history of the game real quick. I always like to give some fun facts before we kind of dive into the conversation in earnest. Um, Before this game came out, there was a tech demo at Space World 2000, which showed Zelda. It was kind of supposed to show off like Zelda, like Link versus Ganondorf in a really high end, like good graphics, like something it was meant for going to be for the GameCube. So everyone had it in their mind that the Zelda on GameCube was going to be this like super gritty, realistic looking Zelda game. And
Hmm.
then what we obviously ended up getting was not that in any way, shape, or form. Um,
Hmm.
and it really it hurt the game pretty bad. Like, that tech demo set expectations that they did not meet, for better for worse. Unfortunately, I think the game looks better than it would have looked if it tried to go realistic, but it did hurt the game pretty badly. And so much that there was going to be a sequel. They were planning a Wind Waker sequel, not like what we got on the DS, but just something in its own right. And it got scrapped because of the lower sales, and they ended up turning to Twilight Princess, going back to the gritty style, which is what Twilight Princess ended up looking like. Um, so it's kind of a bummer, and I really think that, like, Wind Waker is such an interesting game because you really kind of, it shows the fickleness of the zeitgeist, right? You know, how easy it is to turn opinions, and how time heals so many different things. Wind Waker was reviled when it was first announced and came out. There were its fans, obviously. Maybe you were one of them, I don't know, but there was a lot of people who were really against it because of that art style. They didn't like the cartoony
Right.
thing, and they wrote it off. And I was like that. And I guess, spoiler alert for kind of final thoughts without going into the full depth of them. It's a shame it spoiled a lot of people's first opinions of this, because this game, I think, is arguably one of the best Zeldas in terms of the classic formula Zelda, pre
Hmm.
Breath of the Wild Zelda. And some people prefer Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Zelda. Some people prefer the older formula. But if you're looking at, like, the quote unquote classic Zelda formula, I think Wind Waker arguably does it the best. But I don't know. Is that a hot take? Do you agree with me on that?
So, ironically, before we came on, I was actually you ever like play a game and you love a game so much that you actually go back and you look at old YouTube footage of said game and like
Mm-hmm.
stuff from like years ago, like, oh man, kind of like looking at all like the beta elements, the stuff that was in like the pre-release footage, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, in Mr. Meats playing Breath of the Wild today, the Switch 2 edition, of course, but I went and I looked at the Nintendo Treehouse of Breath of the Wild back in 2017 when they were demonstrating the game and everything, how it played. And then in one of the suggested videos was the making of Breath of the Wild. And it was a multi-part series of like how the game came to be and whatnot. And so one of the videos was titled Breaking Zelda Conventions, meaning that they were always trying to find a way to evolve the franchise, from its predecessors. So Wind Waker was actually featured in that video as
Mm.
one of the directors, Eiji Anuma. He was saying that, they wanted to incorporate like an open air / open world type gameplay with Wind Waker, but because of technical limitations, they were only allowed to put so many islands on there. And with that being said, I feel like Wind Waker definitely gave you a lot more freedom in terms of everything compared to, let's say, like Twilight Princess, that was more story driven. But Wind Waker, I feel like I agree with you. Wind Waker definitely was not very positive in a lot of people's eyes when it was first revealed. We all
Mm.
saw the Space World tech demo with Link and Ganondorf fighting in some kind of chamber, looks really nice and everything. And then they show up Wind Waker, and then people are like, "Oh, what the hell is this?"
Mm-hmm.
and I remember like just seeing all of the negative feedback online at the time. I think I was like 15 or 16 when Wind Waker got announced at was it E3? I think that year, the year after
I'll,
that, I
I'll look
think.
up when it was announced. I'll look that up.
And then I just remember like people are like, "Oh man, this game looks like crap, and why is it so cartoony?" And why does Link look like that and everything? And people were just literally just shitting all over it, like, "Oh my god, this
Mm-hmm.
game looks horrible, it looks bad." And then the game came out and it came to excellent reviews. A lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people appreciated the art style, but to agree with what you're saying. I feel like it did divide the fan base at the
Mm-hmm.
time, where people were like, oh man, some people see Zelda as like this kind of like this Lord of the Rings, greedy, realistic fantasy adventure, and then the other side it's like, oh well, you know what, that art style isn't really too bad. It conveys more emotion. You can see the little lines in the wind. The
You can,
waves.
like, Link's eyes are so expressive too.
Yeah, his face, his
Fun
mouth.
fun fact, they had experimented with different colors for Link's eyes. Like they originally wanted to do just have his eyes be like pitch black, and that was changed because someone told them that Western audiences will find that creepy. And I'm glad
Right.
they changed that because he would have looked like a demon, just like no emotion, just black eyes running around. And then they also had an idea to like kind of give him like maybe blue eyes or something like that, but kind of in the same vein of like Mario from Mario 64, how there's like that little ring of blue right around his pupil.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm happy that they didn't do that though. I'm happy they just gave him like, just a straight black pupil with white eyes, and I think it works a lot better. It makes him very expressive.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And then for me, the crazy thing is that Wind Waker, honestly, even though it divided up the fan base when people who played Zelda from the original, from Ocarina to Majora's Mask, Wind Waker is actually a love letter to Ocarina in a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah,
I mean, from the storytelling to the characters to the gotcha moments, like, oh, this character is a descendant from Ocarina's timeline, and I mean, just everything was a love letter to Ocarina in a sense, where I felt like people who judged the game based on its appearance were just SOL, because it's a fantastic game, and from a gameplay perspective, from an artistic perspective, music. I mean, even the lore in Wind Waker is too good, and
it's really good.
I
Yeah,
mean,
we're gonna dive into all that too, man. What I want to ask you real quick: were you one of the naysayers at first, or were you like? Because like I said, I was a naysayer. I was the one who doubted, and now I've completely 180. But were you a naysayer originally, or were you kind of more wait and see, or were you excited from the get go? Like, where did you kind of fall?
as a teenager, I was Nintendo 100% all of the way. Whatever they put out, I'm buying it. Like that was
Mm,
me when I was a teenager. So when I saw Wind Waker, I said, "Oh, this looks cool," and whatever. And I defended it, and I was like, you know what? It may look cartoony, but I'm pretty sure there's a good game and a good game under that cartoony aesthetic.
I'm glad you were more open minded than I was. I mean, even if it was basically like Nintendo blinders at the time, like Nintendo could do no wrong, you at least didn't write off this game that were other Nintendo fans who also were maybe of a similar mindset. Maybe even though they were diehard Nintendo fans, they still wrote it off anyway. So I actually first played this too at my buddy Tristan's house. Tristan has been on the podcast before, and he was the one that got me hooked on it. And I ended up really liking it. I did not finish the original version though because of the Triforce quest, which we will get into. We'll go into some of the similarities and differences between the original version and the HD version on the Wii U. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else in terms of just stuff to talk about from the top. Before we dive into the gameplay, Tendo, is there anything else you want to touch on? Just kind of early overall thoughts before we dive into going in deep and whatnot.
Yeah, sure. So most definitely, when it comes to the Zelda franchise as a whole, I have a neutral standpoint on every title, and I tend to treat every title individually and not like, okay, this game is like this or like that, because
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's an unfair judgment. So I'm not going to go into Skyward Sword and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm expecting Ocarina of Time, or vice versa. So I typically treat every entry in the franchise as its own separate entity and try not to compare and contrast. Like, the references are there. Like, I get like the cool, like, oh yeah, gotcha, those kind of things. But I typically treat every game like its own separate like entity.
That's a pretty healthy way to go about it. Is there any games in the series that that you didn't like though? Like I remember when I was asking you to see if there was a Zelda game you'd be interested on and coming on, and I mentioned I'm kind of in the mood for the cartoony stuff, so I mentioned obviously this one, Spirit Tracks, and also oh my gosh, Phantom Hourglass. And you said you prefer Wind Waker, so are you? I'm assuming then are you maybe not a fan of the DS ones? Or are there any other Zelda games that just kind of don't do it for you?
So Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass. Well, Phantom Hourglass, Just I don't know. It didn't really do it for me. I feel like that there was a lot of potential there, and I know that they were trying to utilize the DS's technology at the time. But I think Phantom Hourglass, in my opinion, just felt a little bit too simplistic. And
Okay.
and at that time, I'm coming from Twilight Princess. So once again, like I'm not trying to compare and contrast, but it's kind of like, yeah, this Zelda is going to be great, but then I was a little bit let down by Phantom Hourglass. Now, Spirit Tracks, on the other hand, was a definite improvement to Phantom Hourglass.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
usually
beat
hear
it, but
opposite from other fans, but sorry, continue. I cut you off.
no, you're good. You're good. I definitely enjoyed Spirit Tracks a hell of a lot more than Phantom Hourglass. More so because they brought back like an actual like overworld with grass and trees and stuff. Like for me, the sea was kind of like, oh, I'm so tired of seeing the sea, the ocean. I want
Mm,
like I want my I want my grass fields again and my mountains and my forests and that kind of thing. Where
yeah.
Phantom Hourglass, it was just like, oh yeah, you're just on the ocean.
And I will say we can use this as a good transition to start talking about the gameplay. Um, the traversal in Phantom Hourglass wasn't as much fun as it was in Wind Waker because you're both sailing the sea, but the way you do it in Phantom Hourglass is you kind of draw like a path from what I remember
Hmm.
on the touchpad, and your ship will follow along that path. And in Wind Waker, it is very open. It is like you can sail anywhere. But what's interesting about Wind Waker is the traversal itself. Even like it's a really crazy balance that they struck with that because it's a big open sea with not a lot in it. There's at least one island in every square. I think there is only one island in every square, or like one series of islands or set of islands, or something like an archipelago or something like that. But there's only like one really point of interest in each square on the world map. But for some reason, I think that really like the world still feels pretty it doesn't feel boring to explore, which is crazy because it's basically like 95% water, right? Like it's just
Right.
it's crazy that it still doesn't feel all that boring. It kind of honestly reminds me a little bit of how they did the pathing in Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild there's a lot of open places to explore, but they give you points of interest that your eye is drawn to that doesn't make it feel quite as boring, even though there's lots of slow movement. Well, not slow movement. There's the traversal takes a little bit of time. You may move quickly, but it still takes time to get from point A to point B. And similar
Hmm.
to that is in Wind Waker. There's a lot of traversal, and I guess to kind of give a backdrop for those who may not have played the game before, just as a quick a real quick story overview. You play as you can name him Link, but you find out late. I was about to spoil something. We'll wait to the story section. Basically, you live on this island. You live on an island called Outset Island. You name your character whatever you want. So he's Link. Link lives on Outset Island with his sister Meryl. Is that
Arrow.
Errol? Errol. There we go. And she gets kidnapped by a giant goddamn bird. Uh, and the reason she gets kidnapped by a giant goddamn bird is that there were pirates that showed up, and the leader of those pirates, a girl named Tetra, a woman named Tetra, whatever she is. She's small, so I can't tell. Like she acts and speaks like she's a woman, but she's the size of a child, so it's very confusing. Um, she leads the pirates, and she kind of looks a little bit like Errol, just slightly different, like similar hair color and whatnot. And the bird confuses Errol for this pirate for Tetra, and takes Errol instead of Tetra. So then you have to go rescue her, which then of course spawns this, sea, this ocean crossing journey of and discovering that Ganondorf is back, and of course because it's a Zelda game, and you have to take him down and this and that. That's a very basic overview of the plot, but that is the inciting incident. You have to go rescue your sister, and it unveils a larger plot of Ganon trying to come back in power and reclaim his former glory type of thing. So that is like the basic overall setup with it. And you have to sail around from island to island, and there is a lot of downtime. And I think because there's so much to talk about with the gameplay too, man. There's the dungeons, there's the new different weapons and items and everything. But traversal, since we're kind of starting here, what's your take on it? So one of the things that they added to with the HD remake was they added the swift sail pretty much, and it makes travel a lot faster. And part of me thinks that actually kind of does a detriment to the game. In believe it or not, I find that like sailing on the ocean is very contemplative, and I think that kind of enhances it in some sense. I know it was a technical limitation that they didn't go faster back on the GameCube, but I actually think it does it. I think it enhances the experience, but I don't know. I've been rambling for a little bit, so I want to throw it over to you, Tendo. What's your thoughts on the traversal? Like what's your thought on sailing? I guess like did you enjoy it? What are some things you like about it that you don't like about it? What's your take on the HG versus original? Like in terms of just the sailing, like what are your thoughts?
So in the original version of Wind Waker, the sailing was not, I wouldn't say like a chore. Like it was fun to sail, but man, changing the wind direction every time you had to
Oh
go
my
somewhere,
god, yeah,
that
yeah.
that was a pain, man. And it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, you want to go north, you got to change the wind to the north and to the south and whatever direction you want to go to. And I think, I'll piggyback on about the swift sail. Like, yeah, I think when you sail slowly and you see like the silhouette of an island or something in the background as you approach it, it builds like anticipation. Like, oh, like what's this island that's coming up, or what's this place of interest that you're sailing to? The swift sail is kind of like, okay, bam, you're here. You know, it is the swift sail is a bit like detrimental to the building up anticipation, like the slow burn of exploration, like
Mm-hmm.
and traversing the Great Sea, in Wind Waker, I felt was fun. Every tile had a point of interest, treasure, or the ghost ship, or the big octos, which were a pain in the butt to fight, or solving trying to resolve the differences between the two brothers. So like that was a thing. So it's like it wasn't just like, okay, you're on a boat and you're just going to like random places. Like every tile had something going on in it. The treasure maps and the bokoblin was like the bokoblin outposts. That was a thing. So it's like it was almost like if Epona was a boat in a sense.
Yeah.
No, I guess the only thing I couldn't stand was the pixel perfect treasure hunt, as I like to call it, because
Yeah.
you see you
Mm-hmm.
see like you will see the ring of treasure from like a distance, and then you hear that shee, that little sound effect, and then when you get closer to it, it disappears, and you're like, okay, so where the hell did it go? And then so my way of cheating was I would just look at the textures of the water and the way
Dude, same,
white,
yeah.
like the way like the white parts are outlined. I'm like, okay, so let me just memorize this, and then you put down a grappling hook, bam, the treasure or whatever. But I mean, I think Wind Waker overall, just traversing the Great Sea, it's fun. You didn't really feel like there was any walls per se. I mean, outside of the islands that, you need like the hook shot to get to or something like that. But, it was basically open for the time, which back in 2003, that was a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting too is like, I know it might be weird to start off with talking about traversal in a conversation about Wind Waker, but at the same time, it is the vast majority of the gameplay. And it's what's interesting about it is I totally forgot about the treasure stuff too. Because the problem is I didn't do it a lot, not because it wasn't necessary. Obviously, you need it for the Triforce quest later on, but I didn't have the upgraded wallet for a while. So every time I would stop and it would give me 50 rupees, I'm like, well, that was a waste of my time. I don't have space for you right now. So that was kind of that's not a frustration with the game. It was more of a frustration with my playthrough, because if you explore around the world enough and you get to the fairy islands, you'll get the wallet upgrade like as long as you explore, you'll get all the upgrades pretty easily. Um, and I think what's kind of cool though about it is that I mentioned before how they somehow don't make the traversal all that tedious, and even though it's long, it like that contemplativeness was really nice. I also think the fact that they let you jump in the boat, which is such a silly idea, but it gives you something to kind of like if you're twitchy while you're just waiting to go to the next island, you can just keep jumping. And I would almost try to time my jumps right as the boat landed so I wouldn't have a single delay between jumps and see how
Mhm.
many times I could do that in a row. There would also be enemies that would pop up on screen, whether it was the big octos like you mentioned, or also just like the sharks. I hated the sharks though, man. Fuck those
Yeah.
sharks. I hated them so much because they're easier to dodge than just to stop and try to take them out. But at the same time, then you're just kind of annoyed where it's just like, leave me alone. I'm not doing anything. Stop chasing me. You're bad at this. You're missing me all the time.
Right. It's funny because I forgot about the jumping part, but it makes me think of like the little mini games you can play, like when you go through like a pair of barrels and stuff, and then like or you can jump on top of the barrels to get like the rupees and stuff. So they made
Mm-hmm.
it, interesting, going from point A to point B without you, dozing off, in your boat.
Mm-hmm. And it could have very easily been boring if they hadn't include those little like mini game type of things in the traversal. I think it would have been a lot more frustrating. And they also smartly put fast travel in it with the twin with the brothers, like you were saying. What were their names? Cyclos and Zephos. And apparently, I was doing some research on this. They were original like they were the frog design for them, not the characters themselves, but that frog design that they used for Zephos and Cyclos they were going to use that as a singular character, and it was going to be your guide character, similar to Navi from Ocarina of Time. And I'm happy they didn't do that again. Is frustrating enough as it is, but imagine just like sailing across the ocean and having that thing like yap in your ear the entire time.
Yeah, yeah. It would be like Fee from Skyward Sword.
I have not yet played Skyward Sword. I've heard Fee is like infamous though. That's how annoying Fee is. I've heard that without even playing it. That's crazy. Uh, Let me see. There's a couple other. Let me double check. I believe there's a couple other fun facts I had about the traversal. Oh yeah, since you mentioned the changing of wind directions, we should at least talk about because it's in conjunction with traversal. The Wind Waker. The reason the game is called Wind Waker is because you have this thing called a Wind Waker, which is a baton, almost like a conductor's baton for an orchestra or a band or something like that. And you can then conduct the wind, as it were, and you can tell it which direction it can go. And what's cool about it is that you can change the time signatures. The song for the wind is in 3/4, and there's also 4/4, and I think there's like 7/8 or something like that. And basically, every time a beat hits, you have to do a different input on the C stick. In the HD remake, it's just your normal joystick. And so, depending on which direction you're pointing when the beat hits, it will indicate the note that you're playing. And so, there's 3 notes for the wind song, and there's a bunch of other different songs. The fast travel song, the Zephos and Cyclos, the gods of the different tornadoes or whatnot. One's the god of wind, and what's the other one? The god of like storms or something like that. And Cyclost is the one that has all the tornadoes, and you can use his tornadoes to fast travel, which is definitely very helpful. But the the baton, the Wind Waker, fun fact, did you know it wasn't going to be a baton originally?
Surprisingly, actually, no, I didn't know.
So, you ever heard? I'm glad they went with the baton. It was originally going to be a theremin. Have you ever seen one of those things?
What? What
A,
is that?
a theremin, spelled Theremin, is one of the. It's electronic music, like electronic instrument, where like it almost think of like a oval, right? And there's a like an antenna going up the one side of it, and it like I guess it emits like radio waves or something like that, and it can detect based off where your hand moves in it. It can detect like the the disturbance in, like, I guess the radio waves or airwaves or whatever it is, and that disturbance it then interprets as a note. So if you're like up higher, then the note is higher. If you're down lower, then the note is lower. And if you move left or right, it changes like the pitch. So is it going to be like an A, a C, a D, whatever it may be?
Hmm.
And you need both hands to operate it. Like if you actually had a theremin, you would need both hands, like one to adjust the pitch, one to adjust like the loud. I'm not doing a great job explaining it. I don't understand all the logistics of how to
Well,
play it.
I'm looking at it now, so it's like you're just manipulating like the electromagnetic waves that come out of
That's
it.
that makes more sense. Electromagnetic waves, not like fucking radio signals. Yeah, and the way you were going to play it on the GameCube was that you had to essentially put your palms on one palm on the C stick and the other palm on the joystick, and you had to manipulate both joysticks to play the theremin. And I think that would have made it way too complicated.
Oh yeah, no, that just sounds like, jeez. I'm glad they did not go through with that, man. Because who the hell would be doing that?
I don't know, man. And the just to shout out where the source for this, Did You Know Gaming on YouTube? They have a lot of great fun facts. Did You Know Gaming on YouTube had a lot of stuff on Wind Waker, and that's where I got most of my fun facts for this. Um, and I'm happy that they did not stick with that because I think the baton is a lot more iconic. I think the baton is simpler. They were able to make it more complex with the time signatures, which I think was good enough. But what are your thoughts on the Wind Waker and how it affects? Like we already said, how it was tedious with the traversal, but did you like the Wind Waker compared to other Zelda instruments, or what were your thoughts on it?
So I think every Zelda game has some kind of musical instrument. At some point, the first game having the flute.
Hmm.
Link to the Past. Having the ocarina. Ironically, Ocarina of Time ocarina. I think the Wind Waker, I think, was a cool key item instrument. The way you can create music in different time signatures was pretty dope. Learning new songs and stuff was pretty cool. And to me, it's just for like the ocarina in just a baton form. It's a key item. It serves its purpose and it moves the plot along. You learn new songs to progress the story. Open up new paths, that kind of thing. So I enjoyed it.
I did too. I think it added just the right amount of complexity compared to like the ocarina or and stuff like that. The ocarina was fun, but it was always like, it was always 7 notes or 8 notes or however many notes it was for a song. And this added a little bit of complexity to it where some songs were 7 notes, some songs were 4, some songs were 3, and even at different like speeds because it has to tick at a slightly like the 7 note ones ticked a little bit faster, so it added a little bit of like skill to it where you had to move the joystick more quickly and decisively, which I actually enjoyed. Um, and so yeah, so the game revolves a lot around exploring this world, exploring this very vast ocean, which a lot of it was due to technical limitations. They wanted the world to be bigger. They wanted it to be kind of, in all honesty, it seemed like originally they had the idea of like a very Breath of the Wild scope of world. Maybe not quite as large as Breath of the Wild, but that same idea where it was a big open world space. And they just realized very quickly they could not render, like the GameCube could not handle it in ways that they wanted to. They also tinkered with the idea of like having, it's a little spoilery, so if you don't want spoilers for the story of this game, jump ahead like 10-15 seconds. But when there's the Hyrule under the sea, uh and the Hyrule that you start out at, they wanted you to traverse between the two, kind of similarly to like the Dark World in Link to the Past or the future and past in Ocarina of Time. And the way you would come back up from the bottom of the ocean was that there would be fish hooks of fishermen, and you would just kind of hold on to them, and they would pull you up, which I actually think would have been kind of a cool idea. That's a very Zelda idea, to have the like these giant freaking fish hooks for fishermen to pull you up. I think that would you have liked that? I think it's kind of cool, but would you have liked it?
So I know they were planning for us to explore like the Hyrule underwater, but it all just got like cut.
Hmm.
And I think they ran out of like development time or whatever.
That
And
was
I just
part of it
know
too.
like,
Yeah.
and I know like when I got to that part underwater with the castle, I was like, holy shit, this is like the coolest thing ever. You go into
Yo, yeah.
Hyrule Castle, time is frozen, and then when you pull out the Master Sword, everything just comes to life, and you like, and you fighting these dark nuts, inside the castle, which are really just like Dobermans and like suits of armor, and I was like,
Dobermans. You're right, man. I didn't even think of it that way. You're right. They're Dobermans in suits of armor.
and I'm like, wait, so you're fighting dogs in armor? Like, what is really going on here? But I think with like the giant fish hooks, I think that would have been like a cool idea. I think they had like a lot of different ideas for Wind Waker that just didn't make that they didn't make the cut, man. And like with Hyrule Underwater was definitely like one of the biggest like oh shit moments in like video game history, like hands down from all the games I've played. Like that was like, woof, boy, like just the impact of like
Uh
you
huh.
going down there. You're just like, holy shit, like what happened
let
here?
let's table this for a little bit later. I'm going to put a slight spoiler. I'll in post. I'll put a little spoiler thing and let people know what timestamp to jump ahead to. But I want to, because I actually think this game has a really good story. Like a lot of Zelda games, in all honesty, you can like take it or leave it with the story. Or it's about like 50-50, I would say. Like 50% of them, like the story is kind of superfluous, and the other 50% it's like, holy shit, this is like a really solid story. And I think Wind Waker, comparatively to other Zelda games, has a stronger story. So we'll put a pin in what we were just talking about here. We're going to come back to it because I'm with you on, I'm in agreement with you. I had a very similar reaction, and I'm excited to dive into that a little bit more. I want to move on to next, though, the combat and the dungeon design and the items, right? I'm You know what? I've been starting off first a few times. I'll let you kick this one off, man. What are your thoughts on kind of like the combat in this game, dungeon design, and like, or just I guess the other elements of the gameplay that aren't traversal, right? Like, what are your thoughts on the combat and all that kind of stuff?
Dude, oh man, the combat in Wind Waker is hella fun, man. The parry system, the dodge system, the fact that you can like, you can take items from the enemies with the grappling hook, man. I mean, it was so much fun. Like I really enjoy like, the combat even has like a almost like a musical element to it too, because when you were given the opportunity to dodge or counter, it plays like that little sound effect. And then
Mm-hmm.
like, oh man, and then when you fight the enemies and when you hit the enemies, like it goes along with the music. Oh my god, that's like one of the best parts, man. So like you hit the enemy like do, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this, like they haven't done anything like that since Wind Waker, and I'm kind of disappointed that they don't. But having the music play along with you fighting when you fight, oh my god, was like
I didn't
chef's
even
kiss,
really
man.
notice that. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it almost felt like it was unintentional, but at the same time, it does time up with the music really well. And that parry, oh man, I could gush about the parrying in this game, even though it's really easy. Like comparatively compared to like other games where they have like like a Dark Souls game or some shit like that, where I can't parry for the life of me. This one they make it very easy to parry, but it's also really satisfying, especially against like the dark nuts or whatever it is, like those giant knight dudes. Like
Yep.
it is really satisfying. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Sorry, I cut you off though. Continue.
No, you're good. And I feel like the items, were fun to use. The hook shot, the hammer, the grappling hook, the Deku leaf, and even now, I mean, if you really look at the Deku leaf, sort of is like a predecessor to Star Wars Sword Cell, which is a predecessor to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom's paraglider. Except for
Yo,
the Deku
yeah.
leaf. With the Deku leaf, you had to use a magic meter to sail in the air, but hey, it kind of works the same in a sense. Um, And of course, you had like the fire arrows, the ice arrows, and stuff, and of course, the power bracelet, to pick up items, and the bomb flowers too. I think the bomb flowers were unique. I mean, the just the Link's overall toolkit in this game is just great, and you have like the spoils bag, for like your butterfly, like your joy butterflies and your
Hmm.
your necklaces and stuff like that. It's like I love collecting crap in games, so to me that was like heaven. So I just like collecting a bunch of junk, and even stuff like the different kinds of bait. Like there was one Triforce quest where you had to actually control one of the seagulls.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that. I think that's actually a I have an issue with that in terms of its design. Like the idea is cool, but the way they try to broadcast it to you that that's what you're supposed to do, I think is bad. But I'll get into that once you're done.
Yeah, the toolkit, Link's toolkit is real nice, man. Like, it really felt like, the traditional Zelda game. And I think that's the thing with Wind Waker. It really is your traditional Zelda game. You're just on a giant ocean, instead of,
Hmm.
instead of your grasslands and your mountains and you have an ocean. But I feel like when you do approach an island, you get that in small chunks, So you're having an island that's a forest, or you're having an island that's, a mountain like Dragon Roost Island, which is kind of like the game's Death Mountain, So every bit of Zelda is presented to you in like small portions, So it's not like you have like Hyrule Field, your Hyrule Field is now the Great Sea, you
Hmm.
know, but you still have your elements of Zelda, sprinkled here and there. It's just that it's all separated. If you understand, what I mean.
Hmm. Hmm. I think also like yeah, it is like you said, it is a classic Zelda game. But what's interesting is like a lot of the stuff is how can I put this? There is a lot of repeat items: boomerang, bow, hammer, hook shot, bombs, stuff like that. But then the stuff that was new that they added, the grappling hook and the Deku Leaf, were great additions. I think the grappling hook is one of my favorite items in the entire game. The fact that you can use it to like steal items from enemies, you can use it to swing. Obviously, like if you have a spot you can latch it onto, you can swing from one side of a gap to another, or you can stop and use it to climb up, and that way you can use it to get up to different areas that maybe you couldn't before. Really, really like that quite a bit. And I'll touch on this thing like the pair, the Hioi pair, or however you pronounce it, is the one that is the item that lets you control seagulls. I they don't do they ever tell you that prior to that Triforce shard? Like, is it based off you having to ask around? Like, are you just supposed to like? Was it expected that you're supposed to ask all over the goddamn islands to figure out that you could do that with the pair? Or does Errol tell you in the very beginning? Because I know like the seagulls really like her, but like I remember getting the Triforce shard. And I was trying to like kill all the birds with my bow and arrow from a distance, and it was just wasting arrows, only to realize that I just had to take control of the bird and let you, or a pelican or a seagull, sorry, and fly up and get all those different things. But I didn't think that was intuitive at all. Like that's one of the issues I have. Like I like this game overall, but one of the issues, I think one of its flaws in design is this area specifically, where there is little to no direction given to you, and the hint is just like there's not really much of a hint at all for it, because if you don't know that the Hayoi pair can like even take control of seagulls, you wouldn't have any idea that that's the solution, you know.
Yeah. So like Zelda games, always had most Zelda games always have a few different nuances of like, oh well, here's your vague hint, figure it out, right? And it's kind of like, well, you put your thinking cap on, and then you have to kind of think really like unconventional and like outside the box. But then there were just some puzzles in Zelda games where you're just like, how the hell am I supposed to figure that out? Like for example, in Link's Awakening, in the second dungeon called Bottle Grotto, there is a room that has a key, and you have to defeat three enemies in a certain order. So there's an item in Link's Awakening called the Owl's Beak, where inside of the dungeons there are owl statues. If you put the owl beak on the owl statue, it gives you a hint of how to solve the next puzzle, or whatever, right? So in this room, the owl tells you first defeat the imprisoned Poe's voice and last Starfos, right? So in this room there are three enemies: the Poe's voice, which is the little bunnies or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Starfos, which is the skeleton dudes, and Keese, which is the name of the bat. So the owl tells you defeats Poe's voice first and then last Starfos. So obviously the order is bunny, bat, skeleton dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
But unless you're like a Zelda hardcore fan who actually knows the name of these enemies, you will not know who the hell these dudes are. You're like, what the hell is a Poe's voice? What the hell is a Starfos? What? So approaching that from like a casual player's perspective, you like, I don't even know what, what the hell is a Starfos?
I
You know,
think I think though, at the very least, with a puzzle like that, generally they have sound effects to like clue you in on like, oh, you like, it's usually like a ding or like a burr or something like that. I don't know if that's the case in that Link to the Past puzzle. It's been a minute since I've played it, but I don't know. I think with this, it's like with that puzzle you were referencing, all the mechanics are known to you from the get-go in order to how to solve it. With this
right?
one here, you're not even aware of this mechanic. Like you like, unless you specifically like ask somebody about the pair, which I don't even remember if it's Beetle. Shout out to Beetle, man. I fucking love that dude. He For those who don't remember Beetle, he's the dude who owns the item shop on the ship that just kind of sails around. That man must be a time lord, because he can be in like 6 different places at once. And anytime he hops in, anytime you hop into his store, he is so happy to see you. Every time you buy, he's like, "Oh, thank you, bye bye." I love Beetle, man. I could
Yeah,
I
yeah,
find myself doing my bad Beetle impression more often than I probably should in my everyday life. I'll be at my job and someone will send me an email, and if no one else is around, I go, "Oh, thank you."
I see. So like, I don't know, like Josh, if I'm having premonitions about our like podcast, but once again, I was talking to Beto in Breath of the Wild earlier, and then I went online and like I went to like the Zelda wiki and I was reading all about this dude, and like from Wind Waker, because he's a Wind Waker, he's in Skyward Sword, and he's in Breath of the Wild, which is the Kingdom, whatever, and he's also in like the Minish Cap and stuff too. But I'm like, he is such an interesting character, man, and he loves Beatles, which is where his name comes from, but he's like one of the most friendliest NPCs I've ever met in the video game, man. I mean, like, he sees you, he's happy to see you. I mean, he's putting in that work, man. From if he's not pedaling that boat, he's pedaling his house in the sky. Or in Breath of the Wild, this dude just has like this big ass backpack that looks like a beetle, and he just goes from like stable to stable, like with this big ass backpack. Like, he is like, dude is locked in, and he is dedicated to being the best beetle he can be.
I Something that I think that Zelda does really well, that the Zelda franchise does really well, is they create side characters who don't have a lot to say in terms of direct number of lines, but they are very clear in their purpose and definition in life. And I think of Beetle, obviously, from this. I also think of like Tingle, right? Tingle, obviously, he's a crazy, goofy character. He's designed after an otaku. Like, the idea behind him is that he's an otaku. That like that, or that's not in the Zelda verse, but like when they were designing him, they imagined a crazy otaku, and that's
Mhm.
what Tingle is. But like, he sticks with you. Like, you remembered Tingle because of the Kurio Lumpa or whatever it is, and it
Yep.
just he just really kind of sticks with you. Also, who I forget his name, but the dude who runs all the mini games in Wind Waker, where he puts up the ridiculous things in front of his face, where his face can actually like
Oh
squeeze
yeah,
head holes,
yeah.
and
He's like,
the
kaboom,
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 sploosh.
splish, sploosh.
um, what I love about his character is that he's always so disinterested in everything until you like. ask him until you say, yeah, I'll play. He goes, oh, okay. And then he kind of like he commits to the bit. And honestly, even though I know nothing about this man's backstory, right? All we know is that he is a bored worker at a job.
Mm-hmm.
And the vibe I get from it, though, because the way that he conveys his lines and the dialogue is that he's disinterested and kind of seems like a shitty employee until he's engaged in what's happening. And it very much feels like he is an artist who has been like his passion has been ripped away from him until you come there and you give him that passion back. He's like, oh, someone cares about this game I've made. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And then you leave and he's like, oh, okay, goodbye. And then he goes back to being that depressed person again. I have
Uh-huh.
no idea if that's his backstory, but they put so much character into him in the method that they in the way that he delivers his lines and how much they wrote him, even though he really only goes kaboom sploosh, and that's his only voice lines. That's the only voice tracks that you get from him, and just the way his dialogue is written, you almost have a whole character arc that's being written without him actually saying anything. It's really well done.
I've always loved like when you beat the mini game, he puts on the little children, and he's like, "Yay, yay, yay!" and, and then like after that, he goes back to like his regular like born self. Like, okay, here's your prize, get out.
He's so weird. I love that character so goddamn much.
No,
Um,
uh,
sorry, go ahead.
while we're on it, while we're on the topic of side characters, right? And I'm not trying to sway
No, no, no. By all
yeah.
means, keep going. We
So
can switch over to that.
the one of my favorite side characters in the game, and you will know who I'm talking about because he's one of the first weird side characters you see NPCs in this game. And I'm talking about Outset Island, the kid with the snotty nose, and how he follows you everywhere. And I'm like, dude, you just have this
I
giant
hate that kid.
booger.
I hate
You have
that
this
kid with a
giant booger
burning
come out your
passion.
nose, dude.
I found out just now that his name is Zill. Had no idea he had a name. That boy does not deserve a name. I don't like him at all. Or he just the fact that that goddamn giant booger that's just wobbling all over. Like he chases you around, and I keep thinking it's gonna get on me. It's fucking gross. It's just
And
it's just gross.
yeah, like he follows you around, and then they play that little boing 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 every time he like walks in your direction, like boom 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 boom. Boom. And
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about Wind Waker, we talk about the art style, the
Mm-hmm.
cell shaded, or well, Nintendo calls it toon shading. But we talk about the toon shading, and we talk about the overall presentation, and then you can't characters like that would not work in a realistic Zelda game.
No.
Not at all. Not like no, it would not work. And when I look at Wind Waker when I see the big picture, no pun intended, of the art style that they've depicted in Wind Waker, and it's perfect. Like it's almost like a multiverse kind of feeling where it's like it's
Yeah.
still Zelda, it's just in a different type of world, but you acknowledge that it's still Zelda. It just looks different. Like I don't know if you're familiar with like stuff like Across the Spider Verse, and like that kind of like those movies, the whole like Miles
Mm-hmm.
Morales, the different kind of Spider
Yeah,
Man.
yeah, yeah. I haven't seen
So
Across the Spider Verse, but I saw like the art style in that. I've seen obviously the trailer and clips of it, and it's a beautiful art style in that.
yeah, so you got to think like how there are different Spider Man in different universes. You got like
Mm-hmm.
of course you have like the Tobey Maguire Spider Man, in the live action. You have like the animated Miles Morales Spider Man. So I've always seen like different entertainment mediums like that where it's the same franchise. It's just presented differently. Um, and Wind Waker, like it nails that down to the T. I mean, hell, even when you run across a little what are those kids called? The kids on
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They are. Hold on, I have I the Killer Bees.
yeah, you come across them, man. Like piggybacking off of you saying the side characters are interesting because they really are like they they don't overstay their welcome. They have a sense of mystery and intrigue to them. You know, they have an air about them where they're just like, oh yeah, like, you know, we're here to serve a purpose in the story, but you know, we don't overstay our welcome too much. I mean, come on. I mean, who can't forget that side that part where Link pretended to be a cat when he was following that little girl at night, and the
Oh
little girl
yeah, I
was like,
forgot about that.
and then the girl was like, "Who's there?" And Link's like, "Meow."
There's something that like I'm going to steal a point from the podcast restaurant. Actually, no, there's a couple things I want to bring up. So first, I'm going to talk about some fun facts I have on the art style, and then I'll go into. I want to piggyback off what you're talking about the silliness and zaniness of this game. So real quick on the art style, Miyamoto apparently hated it. He hated the toon style. He wanted it to be realistic, and the dev team really pushed for it. They were the ones that like really kind of pushed for this toon style to be the primary one, and they were inspired by anime that they loved as a kid, specifically Hayao Miyazaki's Animal Treasure Island, which I honestly had never heard of. Like I know I've watched a ton of Miyazaki movies. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I had never heard of Animal Treasure Island. It came out in 1971. Um, and the story was that's why the story was by Hayao Miyazaki, but the director was Hiroshi Ikeda, which I'm not that I know much about Hiroshi Ikeda, but it seems kind of cool. It's basically just it's Treasure Island, but uh, it's with animals and a bumbling group of kids and stuff like that. So I'd be curious. I'd be curious to see what else they, like I'd be curious to see what it's like. But the art style was directly influenced by anime, and you can see it. And I don't. It really has a strong anime influence, and it's not realistic in any stretch. But I think that makes it timeless in many senses. I think that's one of the reasons this game still looks good and why people still have fond memories of it. Like why people are still desperately asking for a Wind Waker HD remake, or just a port of it somehow. I mean, now you can get it on the GameCube app on the Switch 2 or the GameCube service on the Switch 2. But some people are still clamoring for that HD remake, which is fair. So like the art style is great. I'm with you 100%. I think it's beautiful. I even like the explosions, right? When the bombs explode, like the way they have that really cartoon stylized explosion, I think looks beautiful. There's so much to love. Now, real quick, I want to continue to piggyback off what you said about the weirdness and zaniness of this. And I referenced before I was going to steal a point uh from Retronauts. One of the things they brought up is if you look back at the history of Zelda games, look at Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. Zelda had some silly stuff, and like Zelda 1 was very straightforward, mainly because it's not like they could put a lot of personality into that with the technology on the NES. And then you get to Link to the Past, which has some funny moments, and like if you attack the cuckoos or cuckoos and they fucking like ruin you and they start chasing after you, like there's small stuff like that. But like Link's Awakening is just weird as shit. There is so many weird things in that game. I mean, it was heavily influenced by Twin Peaks, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in it. And the point, I think it was Bob Mackey from Retronauts brought up, where he feels that Link's Awakening gave the Zelda team permission to do weird things. And you can see that ever since Link's Awakening, Zelda has weird ideas in it, weird characters. Look at like all the weird shit in like even Ocarina of Time, like and then Majora's Mask, obviously that was a complete like break in terms of the formula for the time. It was a very big diversion, but you get all the way up to here. You get all the way up to Wind Waker, which was after Majora's Mask. And you have the kid with the snot nose. You have the killer bees, which kind of reminds me of like, kids trying to be mafiosos, but they can't really. You have fucking Tot, the dancing dude by the gravestone on Windfall Island. You have, I know this is minor, but one of the plot points in the game is how there's lots of young girls who are missing because the bird that kidnapped Errol is kidnapping many girls who are like blonde or whatnot, and you'll find out why. There's a story reason for why later on. One of them is a girl named Maggie, and her dad is looking for her, and he's on Windfall Island, and he runs up to. He's like this old looking man. He like, I don't know how that man is a dad. He looks like he's a grandfather, but whatever. And he runs up to you and he asks, "Hey, I've my daughter was kidnapped. Would you help?" And if you say, "Ooh, no," that's the option. It says, "Yes, I'll help," or the other option is literally, and I quote, "Ooh, no." And if you select "Ooh, no," he makes out the like a sound effect. Like, it sounds like a door opening. It's the strangest sound ever. And the first time I heard it, I just bust out laughing. I should feel pity for this man, but the sound effect they chose was like that of like a whiny child. It was honestly kind of amusing. Um, and there's just so, and like when you get over to Forest Haven, you see all the Kokery people there, the little wood sprites or whatever. Like, they're fucking adorable and weird, but it works really well. Um, there's just so much, and obviously Tinkle making a comeback from Majora. He's one of the weirdest fucking dudes ever, and I had no idea. So he has like little helpers on Tinkle's Island. Did you know they had names too?
You mean the other Tingles? Yeah.
Yeah. Did you? I had no idea they had names. One of the dude in the pink Tinkle suit, his name is Ankle. Sorry. The dude in kind of like I don't want to say, that's like a bluish purplish suit. I would say it's more on the blue side. It's like light blue, light dark blue almost. His name is Knuckle, and the Tinkle in the white suit is just David Jr.
David Jr.
Shout out to David Jr., man. what a wild choice for a character. David, do we ever meet David Sr.? Fucking no. He's not anywhere to be found. It's David Jr. through and through.
And
this
then
game's weird. I love it. Sorry, go on.
and then this is why when people ask me, "Oh, why do you love Zelda so much?" I'm like, because it's an experience, bro. Like, it's not just cut close. So it's not just like cuts. It's not just cut clear and draw. Like, okay, you're a hero saving a princess, and there's a giant evil pigman at the end. It like, that's just like a very, very, very loose Cliff Notes version of the franchise as a whole. Like, just the entire franchise is eccentric as hell. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to, like, the way everything comes together, like the story, the world, the characters, the music, like it's all just put together like the most fanciest dinner like you will ever have, man. And every course of that meal complements another course of that said meal. Like, everything is just, I wouldn't say perfect, but it's great, man. Like, I love it, man. Like, Wind Waker, I feel like Wind Waker is like probably like the most like anime-ish out of all of the Zelda
I mean, well,
games.
yeah. I mean, it was inspired by that. What is it? Animal Treasure Island. So yeah, very much an anime.
But yeah, man, like I mean, hell, even the pigs, man.
It's some great designs in this. Something else to kind of slightly bring it back a little bit towards gameplay. I want to touch on. Because I don't mean, actually, we kind of pretty much discussed graphics, at least to me. I don't have much more to say except it's just beautiful. But to bring it back to the gameplay a little bit, I also want to talk about the island design, right? So like, we've talked about how fun it is to traverse the sea. We've talked about how the new items are all honestly really fun and interesting. They really, even though there's not a lot of new items for Link to use, the ones that are new are really well designed. Like, they think they use them frequently throughout all the dungeons, the grapple hook and the Deku Leaf and whatnot, and that's really cool. And the fact that you can have multiple uses, like we didn't even really touch on the Deku Leaf, but how you can either blow things with, like, you can take the leaf and like whoosh it down to like create a big current of wind, or you can use it like you mentioned before, Tendo, with the it's like a hang glider that uses magic. But sorry, I least touch on it. There's a little bit of the deck relief, but to bring it back, the island design, what I want to touch on is how well, like, no island really feels the same, and even the ones that do, like the 2-eye and the 3-eye reefs, which are very much like meant to be just kind of placeholder things, like, all right, we need something here, let's throw it there. But like when you have an island, like, it really feels well thought out. And when there's people on the island, when there's other characters on the island, whether it's Outset, whether it's Windfall or whatnot, there's so much, like, I don't know, specifically Windfall Island. I really, really, really like Windfall Island a lot, because it's something that I was going to say for my final thoughts, but I think it fits a little bit better here. I think something that I really love about a lot of Zelda games is that since there are so many quirky characters and side quests and like different parts of the world, and I feel it the most with Wind Waker, out of the Zeldas that I've played, I should clarify, that it feels like no matter how many times I play it, there's always something new to explore. Like, I feel like, I'll explore around Windfall Island for like an hour, and it still feels like I might have missed something. I still think there's like a shop here hidden in the side, even though it's not a big island. But it's designed so tightly and so well that there is so much to do and see on it, that gives you a feeling of that there is this, like, there's so much more depth in it than maybe there actually even is. But I love how the islands are built in here, because any island that doesn't have people has like some type of challenge, usually, whether it's to get a new weapon upgrade, whether it's from a fairy fountain island or a, like, like, what is it, like the fire mountain one was one, or there's just like maybe it's like a little puzzle challenge or something like that. Each island has a really fun like gimmick, usually, unless it's once again the like the kind of the coral, the reef islands, but whatever. That there's, how I forget how many squares are. There's a lot of squares. There's a lot of different islands in this game, so I'll forgive them for using a couple boring ones. But the ones that aren't the kind of those placeholder ones are fascinating, and I really like them. And I think it just kind of lends to the idea that because the ocean is so vast and there's so many different islands you can explore, and it I guess the reason I enjoy that so much is the same reason I also enjoy Windfall Island so much, and I feel like they kind of complement each other in a weird way, where Windfall, like I said, feels like no matter how much I explore it, there's always something that I missed. Maybe I feel like, there's this hidden shop that maybe I just haven't gotten to yet. And it's the same with the Great Sea. Like, I always feel like there's just some island that I haven't explored yet, even though I have completed the map before. But one of the reasons I almost never want to like speed run this game, or like really try to, like, even if I had time for speed running, but like really like buckle down and like 100% it, is if I do that, then I'm going to know the game inside and out, and that sense of mystery is gone. And that sense of mystery that the game makes me feel even now is hard to replicate. And I love the islands for that. Sorry, any thoughts for you in terms of the island design, though? I want to throw it back over to you now.
Oh yeah, sure, no, most definitely. Your input definitely, man, is definitely is awesome. Um, so for one, when it comes to Outset Island and Windfall Island, one of the things that I typically notice the most in the video games is the music. So
Oh yeah.
so Theme, Outset Island's theme has bits of Kokiri Forest from Ocarina of Time in it, and Windfall Island is basically Kakariko Village just at a faster tempo. Um,
Oh, I
which is
never
probably
noticed that.
why which is probably why it may seem familiar to you, because so Nintendo has this thing uh, where they have these constantly reoccurring themes, musical themes in their games, where even though you're experiencing something new, there's a little hint of like nostalgia there, or like familiarity there. You know what I mean? So when you get to Outside Island, you hear, the Kokiri Forest theme from Ocarina. When you get to Windfall Island, you hear the Kakariko Village theme, which made its first appearance in, A Link to the Past. So you have, these reoccurring themes with brand new features and environments, which makes the overall experience like really incredible. So with the islands being said, like I so young me did not like the islands separated and
Oh, okay.
having my favorite parts in different islands. Like,
Mm.
okay, well, there's a forest island, there's a mountain island, there's a cave island, because at the time, when I was younger, when I'm playing Zelda, I like that big grassy green overworld, right?
Hmm.
But in Wind Waker, it was different, where it was like, okay, well, now they give you with your favorite elements of Zelda in bite-sized morsels. So
Hmm.
now that I'm older, you know, and I'm 38, going on 39 this year, and I played Wind Waker HD when it dropped, for Wii U at the time. I appreciated the more bite-sized morsels of the islands because, like you said, they all feel very unique. There is a very little like copy pasta type stuff in this game. Like every from the different reefs, it was like the five eye reef and the three eye reef and that kind of thing, and like the Fire Mountain Island and the Ice Ring Island and you know the Forest Haven Island. Like every island have its own purpose, and every island serves its own purpose to the story and the gameplay. From you're doing you're shopping on this island, or you're doing side quests on this island, or you go to that lady's mansion, and then you break all of her pots and she kicks you out, and
Hmm.
like there's so much to explore. Like, I mean, even like the dungeons, like, that what's the name of that island? The one where it's like the not the pit of 100 trials, but it's something similar to that where it's like a gauntlet. And every time you go
Mm.
down a level, you fight more enemies, blah 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 blah. Then there's a reward at the end and that kind of thing. But like every island, I mean, I think my favorite island in the game probably was Dragon Roost Island.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that island too.
because I'm a fan of Death Mountain.
Hmm.
I look forward to Death Mountain in every Zelda game because it's probably like my favorite place to explore. And then that's also the first time you meet Dorito.
Yeah, I
People
think the
and
Rito is such a great design. Like the Rito race is such a great design.
most definitely, the bird people. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? Then you see, oh well, there's this dragon named Valu that's really pissed off for some reason, and we need you to go in there and explore. and
Hmm.
and of course, I mean, who can forget about the boss against Mogera and the music, man? Oh, it
Oh
was so
yeah.
good. But back to the islands, man. Like I explored, every last one of them. There were some islands where there were just trees, and then you had the hook shot, to get to the actual islands themselves, and you know, and even the design, like with the hook shot, if you see a palm tree, you can hook shot onto it and explore it, So there was always a sense of exploration when it came to the islands. Um, the treasure, like I mean, they were just stuff everywhere, man. Like never leave with how does the scene goes? Never leave.
No stone unturned
No
type of
no
thing.
stone unturned. Yeah, man. There was just stuff everywhere, man. Pieces of heart. I mean, it. It. Like I said, to piggyback on what I said earlier, like Wind Waker, it's really the traditional Zelda experience. It just in bite-sized morsels. Like every island in the game is most likely something that you enjoyed in the franchise before. Just very, very bite sized, I mean, even, when you got like the ice and the fire arrows, like that was cool. Meeting the great fairies, like that was cool. Like everything, did something.
I would almost argue that it's not necessarily that it's bite sized. It's that since you have is the ocean, like in other Zelda games, right? Like think of like, even like Ocarina of Time. Like if you think about it, the dungeons aren't all that different in terms of like length per se.
Hmm.
Uh, but the traversal, you had a lot more things to distract you. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way either, right? Like it's not a
Hmm.
bad thing there, but there was a lot more world for you to look at and poke around the corners. In Wind Waker, it's just ocean. And that
Hmm.
I could see for some people that being a negative thing, right? Where I could see that if I'm like taking out my love of the sailing in it, like there's not as much to look at, so it's not necessarily as like it's not necessarily that it's bite size, it's just that you have less world to kind of explore. Like there's less content for you to explore because it's mostly just ocean. With that said, all the important points of interest that you would see in other Zelda games, not necessarily counting like pieces of heart because those you can get both from islands as well as from the ocean. But a lot of the other stuff, it's just that they basically took those points of interest and just made them islands, right? So like
Hmm.
Death Mountain, like if you just go, the Kokiri Forest to Death Mountain and Ocarina of Time, like you have to stop at Hyrule Castle, but you still have to go through Hyrule Field, and then you have to go through Kakariko Village, and then up Death Mountain Pass, and like there's all the stuff. And versus in Wind Waker, it's like once you leave, like if Kokiri Forest is Outset Island, right where you start. Which now that I realize it, that's very on the nose. It's Outset Island. It's the outset of the. I can't believe I didn't put that together. That's very on the nose. Like, I wonder where the game starts. Oh, it's on Outset Island. Um, anyway, so if the opening section of the Great Deku Tree is which that was a full dungeon at the very least, but if the opening section of in the Kokiri Forest and the Great Deku Tree that leads you, once you finish that, you get to the Hyrule Field. That's like Outset Island, right? That's you going up to the top of the thing to like rescue Tetra and coming back down and seeing Errol like get kicked out and then or get captured and you have to go. And then the next thing, you go to Hyrule Castle, which would be your Windfall Island. And then from Windfall, you go to Dragon Roost, which in Ocarina, you go from Hyrule Castle to Death Mountain. So it's kind of a very similar layout of that. You have like an opening area. It just so happens in Ocarina, you get a dungeon in that opening area. Then you traverse an area to go to Hyrule, like to a castle or to like kind of like your next section, which in Ocarina is Hyrule Castle. You get Windfall Island in Wind Waker, and then from there you have your mountain dungeon, right? And it feels so much more direct in Wind Waker because you don't have Hyrule Field to explore. You don't have Kakariko Village to kind of like tinker around with. I mean, you guess you kind of do with on Dragon Roost Isle before you get to the dungeon, but there's not this big climb up the mountain like you do in Ocarina. But even so, you go from Kakariko Village to Goron City, and in this, you don't really go from like the Rito's like town or village or city or whatever to some other city. You just go right to the dungeon. So I feel like it's not that Wind Waker has bite-sized portions of it, though there is smaller elements of it. It's that the traversal is much less busy. And to some people that's a detriment, and to other people they like that. I could totally
Yeah.
see, like people might love being able to poke around Hyrule Field to see what all there is before you move on to Hyrule Castle. Or you might want to like explore around Death Mountain a little bit before you get to the dungeon type of thing. You can't really do that. I mean, you can poke around the Great Sea, but since it's so big, it's like
Yeah.
you have to really like sailing or whatnot. So that's not necessarily a criticism of the game. I could totally see someone not liking it. I love the sailing and I love the directness of it. I found as I get older, I really enjoy linearity and just like tell me what to do. Don't make me
Yeah.
think. Just let me
Well,
let
to be,
let me practice my skill. I don't want to have to think about where I need to go. Give me a puzzle to solve, an enemy to beat, or something like that. But if I'm getting from point A to point B, I don't want it to have to be a guessing game unless you make
yeah.
that guessing game interesting, which most
And then
games don't do for me.
to be fair, your comparison of Ocarina and Wind Waker is really good, but then you forgot about Forsaken Fortress because you go to Forsaken Fortress after Outset Island.
Oh my god,
So
yeah.
so so simply
Yeah.
Forsaken so simply Forsaken Fortress is basically like your first
That's your
dungeon.
first dungeon.
Yep. Except for you don't have your weapon until like the very top. But the Forsaken Fortress is basically like the Great Deku Tree. And then, but no, it's still similar. So like I say, Kokiri Forest, Great Deku Tree, Hyrule Field, Hyrule Castle / Kikaru Village, depending on which way you go in for go which direction you go in. But story wise, you had to talk to Zelda at first anyway, and then Death Mountain and Wind Waker's Outset Island, Forsaken Fortress, Windfall Island, and I think you get your cell on Windfall Island, and then you go to Dragon Roots Island after that.
Yep. That's exactly
And
it.
and but like you said, like the layout is very very much identical because I don't think you even get the Wind Waker until what
Till
after
Dragon
Dragon.
Roost Island. You don't get it till Dragon Roost. Because there is that broken stone. There's two stones, and one is a monument to Zephos, and the other is a monument to Cyclos. And Cyclos is a salty bitch because his is broken. That's why he's not wanting to. That's why you have to like find him on the ocean once you get the bow and arrow, and then just shoot him in the face a whole bunch of times
Yep.
until he's like, okay, I've calmed down now that I got in a couple arrows in the eye. now I'm good to go.
Yeah. So you were saying that you prefer like the linear type progression in like Zelda games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense where it's like, so there's this YouTube channel that I love. The name of the channel is called Boss Keys, and it's the guy. He basically breaks down gameplay formula and progression in video games. He does Zelda. He's done Zelda, Castlevania, Metroid, that kind of thing. And basically, what he was saying that like in the classic Zelda games, every item is essentially a key to the next part. So for example, you just brought up the topic of shooting Zephos in the face with the bow and arrow. And that's essentially like a key to progress later on to get a certain item or whatever. Or basically like every key item in a Zelda game is essentially a key to a door, be it bombs to blow up walls, or hook shot to a new area. So every item represents a key to progress to the next area. So you have that linearity, but it's still kind of like open to you to kind of explore the heart's content. But for you to kind of move on to the next area, you definitely need that certain item to move forward. Which is something, which was a Zelda convention that they were using for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Zelda 1 actually doesn't use it because Zelda 1, you can tackle any dungeon in any order, which is hilarious to me.
It's
But
crazy, I know. Yeah.
but Link to the Past was really the first Zelda to start like the whole, okay, well, you need this, or you need the bombs, or you need a hook shot, or you need the bow and arrow. Well, not even that, because I think only 2 items in that game were required. I think the hook shot and the hammer, but I think once you get to the Dark World, supposedly outside of Dungeon 1, you can tackle any dungeon in any order, apparently. So,
Mm.
they've always presented like that open endedness. But I think with the 3D Zelda games, due to the limitations of the hardware and that kind of thing, that's when they probably scaled that stuff back and go, okay, well, we want the player to go a certain direction. Well, except for the Triforce Shark Quest, you can do that in any
Oh,
order.
but let's get into that then. Let's get into that. Fuck that quest. That's what I say. that quest, man, the Triforce. So for those who don't know, so the Triforce Shard quest is that at some point in the game you've gone through a handful of dungeons already, and you basically are told like, well, we need to restore the Master Sword to its former glory, which we'll get to the Master Sword segment in the spoiler section because it's very kind of pertinent to that. But you have to restore it to its former glory, so you have to like go to some other dungeons to like help expand it, and then to like actually give it its power back, you have to sail around the world, and you have to find these Triforce charts. and then you bring him to Tingle, bring it to our boy Tingle, let him do some fancy dancing and translate it for you. And then you take those charts and you find where they're telling you to go in the world, and you bring your grapple hook and you put you do some spelunking or whatever it is. That's not the right term. It's not spelunking, but you drop the hook down to the bottom of the ocean, you pull up the Triforce shards, and you have to collect, I think, 8 different shards, if I remember correctly. Now, I don't remember too much of the difference between the original and the remake. From what I remember, in the original, it was very expensive for Tingle to translate those charts for you. I feel like they made it cheaper in the HD remake, but I could be misremembering with that.
Nope. So it says in the original it was 398 each, totaling 3,184 rupees. In the original game, the HD version is only 1,194 rupees to decipher the 3 charts.
Because it's the same price, but you have to decipher less charts, right?
Yeah, and they replace, so there were 8 shards, but there's only 3 charts in the HD version, and then you can just find the other 5 shards without the charts.
That's what it is, yeah. And in the original, you needed 8 full charts, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's really where it was. And the reason this shard quest is there is because they ran out of time. They originally intended for another dungeon to be in its place, and they didn't. They put this. They ran out of time, so they put this shard quest in, and it has been the bane of many people's existence for years. They fixed it pretty well in the Wii U version because, like Tendo was saying, you only have to translate 3 of them as opposed to 8 of them, and the other 5 are kind of found just regularly. And that's a huge benefit. It is very frustrating, especially because they are so expensive to translate, and unless you have specifically sought out the fairy islands to get the upgrades to your wallet, you're at a disadvantage, because especially by the time you usually get to the fairy islands, like realistically, the moment you get the sale, you should just fucking go to every fairy island you can find, explore the entire world so you can find the fairy islands, and then you can get the maxed out wallet of like 5,000 rupees. Which, do you know, was it a smaller wallet on the original version, or was it the same size? Do you know at all?
I think it was 5,000. I think in the HD version it's like 9,000. It's whatever. 9,999. I think it's the in the HD remake.
Okay. I'll double check on it as well. The original wallet's 200, then you can get up to 1,000 with the bigger wallet, and then the biggest wallet gets you up to 5,000 rupees. So that is what, I don't know if you can get up to 9,000. If you can, I don't see it on their wiki, but maybe I'm just looking at the wrong spot. But in any case, you can get up to 5,000, which, if you get that early on, that's not a bad thing, because then you have time to build up the rupee count, because you don't need all these rupees to translate the charts until later in the game. But if you don't have that, that max wallet, and you haven't accumulated rupees, because at some point you max out, and so you're still collecting rupees and they're not doing anything for you. And if you need over 3,000 to freaking get the charts translated by Tinkle, that means you're going to be having to grind for rupees, which is not fun. It is one of the worst parts of the entire game. I think if they would have made in the original game, if they would have like I wouldn't have been opposed for them to keep the all 8 charts in the HD remake, but make them cheap, like only charge maybe 100 or even like 200 or something to do. But even then, you still would have been kind of fucked, because the bigger wallet only carries 1,000. So if it was 200 and there's 8 of them, that's still 1,600. You'd have to scrounge 600 more rupees.
Yep.
Which is crazy. So it's a bad idea all around, because the way that the wallets are paired or spread out is you just don't know. It's bad. It's all bad.
Yeah, and so you were right. It's 5,000 for Wind Waker HD. I was thinking about Twilight Princess. We have the Colossal wallet that gives you 9,000 whatever But
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, 5,000 was your cap in Wind Waker HD. But no, like the rebalance in the HD version was really needed compared to the original game, because you literally had to go around the Great Sea and get money for everything. And yeah, it was, I don't know, they really wanted the player to like really like, I guess no pun intended, get their money's worth with this game,
Mm.
because typically in most video games, Zelda included, once you get past a certain point in the game, the money is essentially just like, it means nothing. So I guess it has no value. So I guess they were like, okay, well, we're going to make the player really invest in the money because it actually does something in this game.
Hmm.
But usually in most Zelda games, like money just doesn't really mean much, in the late game, at least, in the early
No.
game, yeah, you get it, for like maybe like a shield or two, or something, a piece of heart, some mini games, whatever. But typically over time, the money tends to diminish the value, and at that point, it's just something to collect.
You're 100% right, man. I think it was a noble attempt for them to try to fix that problem of having rupees and currency be useless in late game, but they did a really bad job of scaling it and pacing it out. Like, I think it's what's so frustrating too is that I think this game overall is really well paced. I think they do a great job of making the story feel like it expands out in a very good pace. The dungeons are spread out very nicely. They're not too close to each other. They're not too far away, both physically and in terms of the amount of time in between them. Um, the dungeons themselves don't take too long, which I'm a fan of. Though the surprisingly longest ones are the ones where like you have to upgrade when you finally have the master sword and you're going to the two different dungeons to like uh uh get their power ups, like to have the sword like awaken pretty much. They're really long quest chains for those, or I shouldn't say long quest chains. The quest chains to get access to those islands are short because you generally, like, each island has some type of gimmick that you can't that you need to get an item to get onto. Like the one has like a bunch of wind on it, so you need to get the iron boot so you can walk up to it.
Mhm.
Another one is it's like an island of ice, so you have to have the fire arrow or something. I'm misremembering a little bit, or so you have, or maybe the other one was with the hammer. I don't fucking remember anymore, but it's not really important. But you need some other item to access these two dungeons, which will awaken the Master Sword's power. And then once you finally get into the dungeons are surprisingly long. And
Mhm.
I'm that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it feels a little bit like you're so used to the pace of the other dungeons, and this one, like, you have to go through a quest chain, which kind of feels a little bit like it's part of the dungeon just to get into the dungeon, and then the puzzles are not bad, but they just take a while to do. So it feels like it's a little slow paced there, but overall the pacing is really good in this game. So when you get to the late game where you have to, it feels really well paced up until the Triforce chart part, and you get to this late game and all of a sudden you just hit a stone wall. Like, you're moving at a really nice clip, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, unless you had that 5,000 rupee wallet and you actually have 5,000 rupees, you're going to be spending a lot of time grinding out rupees, which is not really easy to do from what I remember. I don't know. I played the HD remake in preparation for this episode, so I don't know on the GameCube version if there was easy spots to like rupee grind, but like it's still not fun to have to do that, to have to stop all forward momentum just to go find an island that you can get rupees off of easily. It's honestly one of the worst parts of the game, and they've acknowledged it. Like, the developers have acknowledged that that's why they made it a lot easier in the HD remake. But man, it really is. It's a killer. Sorry, I've been taking up a lot of time with this. Did you have as much trouble with this as I did, or did you not mind it as much?
So I think on the HD version, so I never beat the GameCube version. I know I'm a fraud,
No,
but I
I'm with you.
did.
You're not a fraud. I didn't either.
Wait, did I beat the GameCube version? No, actually, I don't know. Okay, I take it back. I did. It just took me like some years to beat. 'Cause, like, I had to force myself to do the Triforce thing, and I hated it. but the HD version is a lot easier. It's a lot more organic.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely more fun to just go out and find the Triforces as opposed to having some weird dude in a furry suit translate it for me for a very expensive price. But I don't remember how I experienced it as a teenager. I just remember it was a pain in the ass and I hated it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the worst part of the game. And then it's one of those things where it was like, you like a game, but then you get to that part, and then it makes you just like stop playing. And I remember I put Wind Waker down for like at least like a year or two before I went back to beat it. And it was kind of like, I think, did I have a strategy guide? I might have had a strategy guide or an issue of Nintendo Power or something, but I needed some kind of help at the time because this is back, when the internet was like in its like baby days, so it wasn't really like that accessible back then,
Mm-hmm.
so I think I had the strategy guide from Wind Waker from Nintendo Power to help me because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And but fast forward to the HD remake, and I keep saying remake, remaster, HD remaster. And then when I found out that, oh yeah, only 3 charts need to be translated, and you get to get the other ones, I'm like, oh my God, that's so much better.
Oh my God, yeah, it is
Like,
like night and day.
and then of course, with that coupled with the Swift sale, oh, that made it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Swift sale was a godsend, man. I'm like, I didn't use it at the beginning. I used it towards like the late game because I'm like, okay, well, I've seen everything, I've done everything, time to hit the C's at full speed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I think that's when I used the Swift cell the most, was doing the whole Triforce thing. Otherwise, I didn't really use it that often.
I was trying to see. Okay, never mind. I see. I was trying to see who wrote the official Prima guide for this. Oh, this is Wind Waker HD though. Okay, hold on. Let me see who wrote the uh GameCube guide. The reason I was curious about it was I interviewed a dude earlier this year named David Cassidy who wrote a lot of strategy guides. Okay, no, he did not write the original one for this. He worked at Prima Guides though. He worked at Brady and Prima Guides. So I was trying to see. I'm like, oh, I wonder if David wrote this one as well. He did not. It was written by Brian Stratton and Steven Stratton. No idea if they're brothers or not or related in some way. But anyway, that was a random digression. My apologies. I mean, I haven't used a guide. I know I looked up stuff for this, but I would love to have an official like the official strategy guide for this game because I just for the artwork. I think the artwork in this game is beautiful, but I don't have much else to touch on with the gameplay. I'm sure there's other stuff we could touch on. There's a lot of different items that we could go into, but we're running a little long on time. So I want to touch on one other thing before we get to the story. I want to touch on the music next, but before we continue on, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with the gameplay that we didn't bring up? Feel like I'm not. We can go off on it for a while, so you don't have to rush it. But is there anything else about the gameplay that you wanted to dive into before we continue on?
Not necessarily. I think we covered everything, but I must say, I did enjoy playing Zelda Minesweeper.
Zelda Mine. Oh, for the yeah, for the. Oh wait, no. What isn't? Oh, the mini game, right? With the Kersploosh dude. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
God, I love that man. Sploosh. I mean, it was just Battleship from what I remember, but there was a Minesweeper version too.
Well, I guess they're kind of like the same. You kind of
Mm.
just like predicting, like where certain tiles. I think Battleship and Monster, they're kind of like the same thing. Kind of like.
Well, Minesweeper, you want to avoid the mines, and Battleship, you want to hit the ships.
Okay,
So
so yeah, Zelda
it's
Battleship.
reverse Minesweeper kind of.
Yeah, so I guess in this case, yeah, Zelda Battleship is fun.
All right, cool. So let's move on to the music here. Something I've been trying to get better at is discussing music. I always kind of leave it as, oh, it's good, and I'm always bad at like really kind of dissecting it. I'm going to kind of collect some of my thoughts on this quick, but so I'm going to give you the floor first, man. What are your thoughts on the music of The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker?
Oh, it's lovely, man. From the Great Sea, like the sailing theme. It's funny because I actually um I mean, when you're selling around the Great Sea, it's really just a do, but it's just in like a different kind of like tempo. Because Nintendo, they're known for reusing the Hyrule theme in every Zelda game, just in like in a different kind of like range. So when you sell it on the Great Sea, you're essentially listening to like this, I guess, like this grand voyage version of the Hyrule theme, which I thought was
A
interesting.
little bit, yeah. It's slightly modified, but you definitely hear influences of it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. The throwbacks to, like I said earlier, when Outset Island being Kokiri Forest and Windfall Island being Kakariko Village. But, I think, the Mogera theme is amazing. I mean, who doesn't like the theme song when you fight Mogera? It's so good. And then the callback uh, to like other Zelda games, like A Link to the Past, when you're inside Hyrule Castle, you hear like the music for like a little bit, and I don't know, like they're known for just making like really good music, man. I mean, even the battle theme is great, and like I mean, Ganondorf's theme is good, it's all great. Like I've never had a single issue with the music at all.
Yeah, same. I think for me, what I love about this soundtrack is that they nailed the sense of adventure and kind of seafaring. It really feels like let's take Zelda music and make it for pirates, but not necessarily make it piratey at the same time. The music for the Great Sea is just wonderful. I still hum Outset Island in my head. Uh, it's all of it is so good. I think also it's like the other Zelda games, they sounded pretty good, but this is the first one I think that did like a full orchestra recording. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure because and the others just used the chip built in, and so this was actually like a recording of an orchestra, and you can tell, man, it kind of like how when Mario Galaxy went full orchestra and you go, holy shit, this is a soundtrack.
Yeah.
It feels like the same thing with this, and I love the music for Outset Isle. I love it for Windfall's nice too. Obviously, the Great Sea is wonderful. um I think also it just Dragon Roost also has a really good soundtrack too.
I
Really
mean,
good music. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
no, I was going to say, and then like and then who could fit? I mean, who could forget the title screen music, the do 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 do
Yeah,
do 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 do
the flute that's going off on there.
yeah, man, like
It's beautiful.
yeah, man, like they always know the soundtrack, man, like always.
I remember it's one of the few times I've ever gotten to do this. They did that Zelda music tour, the Symphony of the Goddess
Oh
that was
yeah,
going around. I've said before, I'm like, I'm over on the East Coast, so I saw this in Philly, and it was just absolutely wild seeing it in Phil. Like it was one of the because the Philadelphia Orchestra I don't know. Maybe this is because I'm from the area. People always said, "Oh, the Philly is one of the best in the world." I have no idea if that's actually true or not. Any music heads out there, feel free to let me know if I'm right or wrong with that. But they did a fucking fantastic job doing it, and I remember I enjoyed it well enough. I enjoyed, because they selected pieces from all over the Zelda franchise. This was before Breath of the Wild came out, so this was,
hmm
I think, post Skyward Sword, but like pre Link Between Worlds, something around there. And I remember it was really good, and then Wind Waker came on, and I lost my shit. I loved it so much, and it's funny because up until the HD remake, I had never beaten it. I had gotten up to the Triforce quest twice and rage quit because I was so tired of having to grind out rupees. Um, and I guess I don't know why I didn't learn my lesson from the first time and not just go for the freaking the wallet upgrades right away. But
hmm
that's besides the point. But man, just hearing this soundtrack in person with a live orchestra was one of the most amazing experiences. I still remember it. Like I still remember going with my friends and seeing it. It was absolutely stunning. It does a great job, especially like the Great Sea theme, which I've said a bunch of times before. it makes you want to stay on the ocean, and it gives you that sense of adventure really well. Kind of feels like a little bit Indiana Jones esque, but
Yep.
not necessarily. Like Indiana Jones feels very triumphant, the bum ba dum ba bum ba
Right.
da. This kind of feels very kind of like it's a vibe almost, that dun 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 dun, dun. There's a
And then
melody.
and
There's
then
a
you,
very clear melody, but it's not meant to inspire you. It's meant to just kind of chill
and
you. I don't know how else to describe it.
And then, like one of the coolest things about the Great Sea theme is that when you sell, it becomes epic. But then, like when you stop selling, it becomes very somber and calm. And
Yeah,
then
that's a
I've
good
always
point
thought that
too.
was like the coolest thing. Like the music gets more triumphant as you're selling. Like, oh, you're all aboard the high seas. But then when you stop selling, like the music just kind of just like calms down and becomes like this little like somber little, just like you're just kind of just floating in the middle of the ocean, kind of like feeling. But then when you put that cell again, like the horns and the trumpets come back and stuff like that. So like
It's a good point.
that music dynamic shift based upon what you're doing, is just really good.
It's a really good point. I think that actually makes me realize why I hate those fucking sharks so much. Because when the sharks are around you, you hear the really like it's not bad music like the danger music, but it's
Yeah,
not the most interesting. And if they're following you for like 10 minutes and all you hear is the over and over and over again, I just want to hear the Great Sea theme again. Damn it. Stop. Just leave me alone. So I now realize I think that's why I hate the Sharks so much. It's because they get rid of the music I love. The
yeah.
bastards. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And I was gonna say same thing for the P hats, man. The P hats, oh god, those things. Remember,
Hmm.
so the P hats were those giant flower enemies in the ocean that also followed you and attacked you.
Oh
Um,
my god, yeah. I was going to say
yeah,
what I was trying to remember and they like swoop down with their fucking like yellow propeller
yep,
blades or
yep,
whatever.
yeah. Because those things, so they're typically in every Zelda game, like an Ocarina of Time.
Hmm.
They're in Hyrule Field when you're a kid. Like they sit in the grass, and then like when you get close to them, they come out and they start like flying towards you.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what's their official oh, they are called a P hat.
A
Okay.
P hat, yeah.
Wow. For some reason in my head, because their things are yellow, I thought you were saying pee as in like urine.
No,
And I thought you were just making a joke about them, but that's what they're
no,
spelled PEA, like it's a
yeah,
food, the food
yeah,
pee. That is
yeah,
what a silly name.
yeah.
Um, Real quick before we move on to the spoiler section, just shout out to the choo choos, only because that design is iconic from this. I love the little glob. Kind of like how the slimes from Dragon Quest are iconic. I feel like the choo choos are an iconic design from this art style of Zelda. Fucking love them. That was really random. Sorry. Any thoughts on choo choos before we go on?
Oh, the Choo Suits in Wind Waker, man, especially the ones that were like different elements, like the electric ones and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this game, they're like really, really goofy. They're like extremely, they kind of remind me of the uh, since we're on the topic of like weird enemies, the Bokoblins, and they go and they're like the little like the tiny Bokoblins, but they're like really
Hmm.
no, but they're like
Oh
really
yeah,
really
yeah,
tiny
yeah.
Bokoblins. Oh my god, and they make the most annoying
I
noise. I'm
hate
like,
those
please,
things. I hate them.
yeah, but no, but I do like who doesn't love choo choos, man? Like they're
I just keep thinking every time I see it, I'm like, I wonder if that was the inspiration for the train from Spirit Tracks. They just said choo choo. I'm like, choo choo. Oh man, like they just kept, they kept seeing them. They're like, that's just making me think of trains, and then they eventually decided to do a train Zelda. Anyway, that was a dumb joke. We can move on to the final segment of the episode. Um, so we are going to wrap up this episode with, well, it's not really a wrap up. We still have a chunk of discussion left, but with the story. We're going to talk about the story overall. We already had a small, slight spoiler section in the beginning, which I put a little timestamp on. I interjected a little timestamp in the edit. This is now like the spoiler wall section, which I don't always do for every episode, but I'm going to do for this one. So we are going to be talking about the story in more detail here. So if you have not played it and you want to keep it a secret for yourself, or you want to experience it yourself, just pause it here. Come on back once you beat. It's only like a 20 some odd hour game, so come back in 20 hours. We'll see you here, and we can discuss this in more depth. But we are here now. We're here to the final section of the episode to discuss the story. So Tendo, we already kind of had our overarching thoughts on. I guess you kind of touched on it beforehand about the plot twist in this game. So
Hmm.
to lead up to the plot twist, and then once I kind of explain the events up to the plot twist, I want you to just go off, because I know I felt similar about this, but I want you to have to kind of touch on it first. And the plot points up until this is that you you find out that Ganon, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, your sister Errol is kidnapped, and you go to the Forsaken. What I didn't mention is you go to the Forsaken Fortress to rescue her, because you're able to follow her there, and you go to rescue her only to be kicked out by a bird, or no, kicked out by Ganondorf. You fly across the ocean, and you end up in right outside of Windfall Island, and you are awoken by a talking boat called the King of Red Lions. And you're kind of confused as to why he's talking to you, this and that, but he gives you instructions. He kind of tells you, he directs you where to go, that if you want to become more powerful to save your sister, you need to gather these 3 pearls, and to help defeat Ganondorf, because if you want to save your sister, you also have to defeat Ganondorf. And he kind of tells you about like the evil and everything going on with it. So you collect these 3 pearls, and from different dungeons, kind of similar to like the three like gems in Ocarina of Time, right? And or the 3 dungeons
Uh,
in fucking Link to the Past, and the same formula over and over and over again. But once you do, you place them on pedestals, and on different islands on the Great Sea, and they beams shoot out from all of them, and they create a triangle. And in the center of the triangle, in the dead center, a giant tower, I believe it's called the Tower of the Gods, rises up from the ocean. It comes out from the ocean, which amazing visual. One of the coolest visuals in the game, just seeing this. And you sail over to it, and he tells you that you basically like sail to the center of this. I believe you also have to do you have to do a bit of a dungeon first in the Tower of the Gods in order to get to this next section. And there's a ring of light after you do this dungeon, and it takes you down to the bottom of the ocean, and somehow you're breathing. You're confused by this. Link is very confused as to why he's breathing. And then something kind of wild happens. And this is where I'm going to throw it over to you, Tendo. I'm not saying you don't have to break down the story beat by beat like I did, but I think knowing the story up to this point is kind of like I bare bonesed it, obviously, but
mhm.
it's crucial. So I want to throw it over to you. What happens here? What blew your mind when you first played it?
So I know for me, I think it was a hell of a journey up to that point, and then it was a hell of a experience, man. Just to be like, whoa, like this is where it took me to, like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well,
the
here's the
whole
thing: for where did it take you to, though? Like, where did they take you to?
well, well, Hyrule Castle, of course, but
Yeah. Well, that's
Hyrule
what.
Castle,
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Hyrule Castle under freaking water,
Mm-hmm.
and where time has stopped,
Yeah.
and you're like, you go inside the castle, like you see the dark nuts and the castle hallways, and like everything is just frozen. So you make your way through the castle, you know, to the altar, and you see what the Master Sword in its pedestal, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
if you look above on the same glass, who do you see in the same glass? You see the 6 sages from Ocarina of Time in the stained
Yep.
glass, and you're just like, what in the holy hell is going on here? From Naburo to Princess Rudo to Darenia to Saria to Raru, and Impa,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, okay. And then so you pull the Master Sword out. Um, then time resumes as normal. But then the biggest plot twist comes out when it turns out that the boat isn't actually a boat. It's actually King
Mm-hmm.
Hyrule himself. And he's basically summoned you here to tell you that Ganondorf is looking for Princess Zelda, and that the reason why that he's been capturing all these girls is because he's trying to find Zelda, the one that holds the power of the Triforce of Wisdom, because he's trying to complete the Triforce for himself. And then that's when the game goes from, oh, okay, I'm here to rescue my sister, to like, okay, there's much more than what was explained or even demonstrated early on. When you get to that point, you're just like, okay, so this game is bigger than I imagined.
When
That
that happens, it's like, oh shit, this is connected to Ocarina all of a sudden. Like that blew my mind, just knowing, like, just the idea that like you go under the water and the Ocarina of Time that you knew and loved is frozen in time, and you are exploring a slightly updated version of that, and how when you pull out the Master Sword, how time starts to come back, so you have to take out all the enemies in there that were frozen. It's eerie when you go in there, everything's grayscale before you pull out the Master Sword, and
mm-hmm,
it's it's uncomfortable, it's unnerving. You really have a sense of it's very somber, and it's like very revenant, like just seeing what happened before the King of Hyrule had to like basically sacrifice his entire world. Very, very kind of Christian-esque. It was very Noah-ish. Like, we got to flood the whole world to save it. But you see like the last moments before that, and like the enemies closing in on that location. It's really heartbreaking. Like, you just to
mm-hmm.
see like what was happening. Like, the castle had been overrun, and his final thing was just to freeze it in time underwater. Just what a wild plot twist, man. And they even try to do some like interesting stuff with Ganondorf as a character in this, where he kind of he almost acts like he's forced into doing this. Like, this is just fate. This is just what I'm supposed to do. I almost kind of like, he doesn't say it directly, but the vibe I always got was kind of like, almost like, what if Ganondorf realized the timeline, and that he was just, like, it's the same cycle repeating over and over and over again. Like, I'm bound to lose to this kid every single time. Um, it was just, I don't know, man. It just, this whole section here, like this twist, and then realizing that you go to fight Ganon, you can't beat him, so then you have to go awaken the Master Sword to its full power, and that's where you do the 2 dungeons you mentioned before, and the Triforce Shard quest, and then you can finally go fight Ganon and beat him. But like, just the connection to Ocarina of Time was shocking in a good way, and I thought it was just such an expertly crafted, like, kind of they snuck it in there almost. Like, I genuinely wasn't expecting it.
Yeah. The thing with Ganondorf is like, this is actually one of the very few times where Ganondorf isn't really like vindictive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Basically, his whole thing was that he was conveying that he came from a kingdom that had nothing, right? The Gerudo Desert. He wants his kingdom to flourish like the rest of Hyrule does. Vegetation, land, everything like that. Because out there,
Yeah.
in the Gerudo Desert, there's nothing. So I guess in a sense, like, imagine always being in the shadow where someone has, like you said, he realizes that cycle, and where there's always some kid trying to kill you, and he acknowledges that cycle, but at the same time he doesn't really agree with it. I mean, yeah,
Mm.
I guess it's like his fate, but
I
he
wasn't
wants
sure.
to.
Did he actually acknowledge the cycle? I was just kind of reading that into it. I don't know if he actually acknowledges it or not.
Well he says a quote talking about the win and how he coveted the win that day or something like that. So he knows about the cycle or whatever, the perpetual, every time, there's always a Link and there's
Mm.
always a Zelda, which is why hopefully one day, if you don't get the chance to play Skyward Sword, at least read about it, because what the main antagonist of that game connects to this in a lot of ways. But in Wind Waker, we're talking about Wind Waker right now, but basically, just he wants the Gerudo Kingdom to flourish like the rest of Hyrule,
Hmm.
but just he's tired of all the sand, the lack of resources, that kind of thing. So this is one of the this is one of the few Zelda games where Ganondorf actually has some kind of emotion to him, and not just like this power hungry boar pig thing that wants to just kill Link and whatever. But
Yeah.
he actually has a purpose to But the reason why they flooded Hyrule was because Link never showed up to save Hyrule from
Yeah.
Ganondorf.
Yeah.
And then the gods felt like they had no choice but to flood Hyrule, and that's what happened, because I think this is the timeline that happens, I think, after Majora's Mask, I think.
It would make sense if Link didn't show up. Like I don't know the whole Zelda timeline all that well. I know they had to retcon a whole lot of stuff in order to make it kind of fit, but it would make sense. At least think of it when the time this game came out. Majora's Mask shows Link going off to a completely different land, right? It's in Termina, so
Yeah.
it would make sense that that timeline Link goes off into Termina, so he's missing for the events of Hyrule when it gets flooded. So since Link's not there, you could put it together that he was in Termina. That's why he wasn't there, dealing with the bullshit of Majora's Mask. And so they had to flood the whole world at that time. I wonder if is that the timeline, or am I just like making up that
No,
connection?
so there's three timelines after Ocarina that happened. So one timeline, the adult timeline, is when Link defeats Ganondorf. Zelda sends Link back at the time. Link lives his life like normal or whatever, defeats Ganondorf, then he leaves or whatever. Then the other timeline is when Link defeats Ganondorf again. Zelda sends it back in time. Link goes to go find Navi, who disappears, and then Link ends up in Termina, disappears.
Hmm.
And then the other timeline is when Link is defeated by Ganon and takes over, and that leads to A Link to the Past.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's a three timeline split thing. But in any case, Link basically disappears in both of them anyway. Because I'm assuming you never played Twilight Princess, right?
I have, but I did not beat it. My hot take is I don't like that game. I've tried to
Okay.
play it like no, not fourth, like three times, and I've gotten really far into one of them. I think I got like maybe to the second to last or third to last dungeon,
Okay.
and I just stopped caring. And every time I can't bring myself to go back to it, because every time I try, I don't know, that game just
Gotcha.
has not done it for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I understand. It's one of my favorites, but I can understand the criticism. But I was going to say, because the hero shade in Twilight Princess is the hero from Ocarina of Time, the one that teaches you the hidden skill moves.
Mhm.
That's the hero from Ocarina of Time. So that's the hero of time that teaches the new Link all of the hidden skill moves or whatever.
Okay.
The Yeah, the skeleton guy that so when you turn into a wolf and then you howl next to the stone, and then you find where the golden wolf is, and then the skeleton guy appears with the sword and shield.
None of that is familiar. When I played it, it's probably been over a decade.
Oh,
I
gotcha.
will have to eventually go back to do it. Like, to be, and here's the thing though, that was my take on it like over a decade ago, right? Like a lot of my gaming tastes have changed since
Mm-hmm.
then. So I do need to give it another shot, because maybe I'll enjoy it more now. I don't know. It's been, and I also have the GameCube version of it as well. So like I'm not even gonna have to play with like the motion controls like on the Wii. I know there was the HG remake
HD
of it, but
version, yeah.
I don't have that in my collection. So I have the original though. I do have the original game for the GameCube. So I will eventually, at some point, have to give it a shot again.
Let's see. Well, I'm not trying to take over as host, but I wanted to ask you: when it was revealed for Tetra to be Zelda, like what were you thinking at that time?
I think at that point I had already kind of started piecing it together where it didn't kind of blow my mind. I was just kind of like, okay, that makes sense how like this is the reincarnation of Zelda and Link is kind of like the reincarnation of Link type of thing. So it didn't really think too much of it.
Yeah, but I think there were like a lot of connections to Ocarina of Time. I think one of the biggest ones, in my opinion, was definitely the Great Deku Tree and how this Deku Tree and Wind Waker was this sapling from Ocarina of Time that got older, and now he is the new Deku Tree. And
Mm-hmm.
then there was also the case of Jaboon, who obviously is a descendant of Jabu Jabu,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and in which that connection clears because Dorito are revealed to be descendants of
The Zora.
the Zora people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just like, oh, and then how does that work? And then they explain, oh, well, the water pressure got too deep, so they evolved into birds and flew out of the ocean, which makes perfect fucking sense, I guess.
That makes sense to me. That sounds like evolution.
And then so when you do the second part of the game, with the sages, and then when Medley tells you that the sage name is Laruto, and then she's an actual Zord, you're like, oh, holy shit. And then the same thing with the Koroks, where the sage of the Koroks was the what's his name? Well, I know Medkar was the name of the Korok, but the name of the actual kid of Fado, right? Fado.
I think
You know,
so.
yeah, Fado. His form was the Kokiri kid,
Mm.
and then so you're like, okay, so you're putting everything together. Oh, like wow, like so. Yeah, this is essentially Ocarina of Time's future, in a sense.
Yeah, I love that. That's like I was saying. It blew my mind connecting the two. I love that. It's kind of like you ever see like Planet of the Apes, like the original one.
Mm-hmm.
How like the very end, spoiler alert for like a fucking 50-year-old movie, but like the very end, how you find out like the world you're in wasn't some foreign planet, it was actually Earth the whole time
Sure.
because they see
Yep.
the Statue of Liberty. Kind of reminds me of that plot twist with this, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, this was the world I knew from 2 games previously the whole time. But it's great. It's such a great plot twist, and the finale of this game is fantastic too. The Ganondorf boss fight is a little kind of okay-ish. It's not like one of the best final bosses, but the final cutscene is
Oh yeah, he gets yeah,
fucking badass.
yeah, the dude gets turned into stone.
He gets a sword in the forehead and turned into stone. Like, it's so awesome. What an amazing way to finish the game. And like the seeing it go right in his forehead and his arms go limp. Like it's really graphic for a game meant for teens. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie. Like, yeah, there's
yeah,
no blood, but it's like how like if you watch like action movies and they break some dude's bone, or it's like, well, there's no blood or gore, but that still looks pretty gnarly. It kind of
yeah.
reminds me of that.
And then to touch on the Ocarina connection, how can we forget about that one Goron in the game? That one Goron with the hat. Remember, there was only one of them, and then it was never explained what happened to the Goron race, but there was that one, and I think he was on a boat sometimes. I think.
But there was who was on the boat? Was it like the like the sailors or whatever?
No, so there was this one Goron that was on the boat, and I think he sold you stuff, but he was the only Goron that was left from that race. Like they never
Oh, so
explained.
like in Wind Waker, there's a Goron on a boat.
Yeah,
Oh, I
like
didn't find him.
he wears like a hat. Like there's only one of him, but it's never explained what happened to the rest of it. I guess they all died or something underground. I guess or under the ocean. But he was like the only one that like survived.
Hmm.
But we even touching back to the Ocarina of so it was obvious that Dragon Roost was Death Mountain. Like, come on. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and Valu being a descendant of Volgavia was also like a big like twist. I'm like, okay, well, it makes sense. They're both dragons that live in volcanic mountains, so yeah, it make perfect sense.
But one, it's Volcavia is bad in Ocarina, if I remember correctly.
It's the evil dragon. Yeah, like Ganondorf had revived him, and he ate Gorons for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. like, like that was his meal, just eating Gorons all day.
What a dick
So,
move. Poor Gorons. Maybe that's where they all went. Maybe he revived them and they ate a whole bunch. Oh my gosh, was that? Do you think when Ganondorf came back, but when Link wasn't there, do you think that's what it was? Like it ate all the Gorons and there's only one left, and that's why?
oh, I'm pretty sure Ganondorf had a field day when Link wasn't there, bro. He was probably going batshit crazy, man. Like he was probably doing the most.
Messed up shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, like, man, there's so many cool connections. All right. I don't have much more to say about the story, though. Is there any final things on the story before we just go into final thoughts? I want to make sure I didn't jump over anything you wanted to touch on. So, Tendo, any final thoughts on the story before we go into final thoughts on the game?
I would say the only thing that I want to say is that the Link in this game is not the hero of time, but instead he is the hero of wins. So it kind of like perpetuates the whole hero being reborn thing, but
Mm-hmm.
perhaps like maybe every hero isn't always going to be the hero of time, and well, the hero spirit always reincarnates itself as a different hero for a different era. So
Mm.
it's interesting to know that every Link is different. I mean, except for like, of course, Ocarina and Majora, they're the same Link, obviously, but every every other Link is different. Even like, well, except for so like Link to the Past and Link's Awakening Link and the Oracle games Link, they're all the same Link. But typically every other Link is like different. So, but in my honest opinion, I feel like they make this shit up as they go,
Yeah.
and,
Oh, yeah.
and then it's like it's fun to talk about, but honestly, it doesn't make any sense. But they do have a lot of connections there that do make sense. But then there's holes in between these connections that then make you be like, okay, well, if this happened, then why does this exist, and so on and so on. So I try not to think too hard about it.
That's probably for the best. There is, it really isn't like we were never really meant to really think that hard on the timeline. It very much feels like something that they just did because the fans were clamoring for it, and it's
Right.
fine. It's okay. You can do that, but it still is kind of silly. So yeah, I don't mind the timelines, but anyway, let's wrap up this episode with just kind of our final thoughts on the game itself, right? The final send off for the listeners. Last things we want to touch on, I guess. I will go first, and I'll give you the guest the final say. And I'll say this game freaking rules. I loved my experience playing this game again. As much as there's moments in this game that are a little bit more slower paced than I would like the Triforce Shard quest, even though it's upgraded in this, and some of the dungeons feel a little bit too long. Overall, I enjoyed my time with this. I still think it's one of the better Zeldas. I think it's one of the best instances of the classic Zelda formula when the Zelda formula is done right and not done like I was mentioned before how like Twilight Princess didn't do it for me. That game feels like the Zelda formula doesn't work for it. But you know what? Once again, it's been over a decade since I played it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering. But from my recollection, it felt like the Zelda formula, it felt almost too formulaic in that one. And in this one, it felt like they took some good risks with it while keeping the same formula. So I love Wind Waker. I love its art style. I love its music. I love its sense of adventure. I love the way it still makes me feel, even though I I've played it. I played it a while ago I played it over 15 years ago the first time, and didn't rage quit at the Triforce Shard quest. Eventually played it on the HG remake, loved it. Replayed it for this year for this episode, still enjoyed it. if you're a Zelda fan, obviously I'm preaching to the choir. If you haven't played a Zelda, this is honestly a really good one to get into. It's also one of the easier ones. Miyamoto specifically wanted this one to be a little bit easier because he had heard feedback from players that the other ones, like, they would get stuck at a boss and then never go any further. So he wanted this one to be easier, which I can see. The bosses are relatively easy compared to some of the other ones. So this is a great entry point, and this is a really fun game, and I'm really happy I got to play it again. So, Tendo, I want to throw it over to you. Final thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
So yeah, my final thoughts on Wind Waker is that it is a phenomenal game that has aged gracefully. The art style just complements it so well, and the artistic design, the music, the atmosphere is something that you really can't experience in any other Zelda game. Like, everything just works really well, and I highly recommend you play it. Either the GameCube version or the Wii U HD version.
Mm-hmm.
They're both great games, and I wholly recommend them. They are your traditional Zelda games, but they offer a sense of adventure, exploration, and mystery that will intrigue you to literally sail through every inch of the Great Sea to find every possible secret. So, totally recommend, and it's a fantastic game.
Agreed entirely. And that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. That will wrap up this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all so much for listening. Supertendo, man, thank you so much for hopping on this episode. I really appreciated you setting aside over 2 hours, nearly 2.5 hours, to discuss The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. And I'm really grateful that you came on for this. I had a great time. So, for my listeners who may not know you, where can the good people find you online? And is there anything you'd like to promote?
You guys can find me on my Instagram at instagram.com/Supertendo_, because apparently some guy has the name Supertendo and he hasn't logged on in like 10 years. And
this guy.
And it's not even like a gamer dude. It's just like some random dude. So it's like, I have to put an underscore after my name. But yeah, you can find me on there. You'll find lots of Nintendo and Zelda content. And, that's what I focus on the most. And yeah, and to promote, and I don't have anything to promote, but, I would say, take care of yourselves, and, treat yourself well.
That I wholeheartedly endorse this message. To take care of yourself, go to therapy if you need it, if you can. Definitely recommend that as well. Yeah, man, thank you once again for joining me. For myself, though, you can follow me on Blue Sky at stillloadingpodcast.com, on Instagram at stillloadingpod, on Twitch at stillloadingpod, where I stream whenever the hell I'm able to. Usually Saturday nights around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless I'm recording a podcast. On other weeknights, it's just whenever I am free. I also stream with my buddy Andrew over at the Experience Point on Twitch every Tuesday night for a little show called Talk Tuesdays, where we talk about the things we experienced over the course of the week, and that's at the EXP Point on Twitch, so you can check that out. If you like the show and you want to help more people find it, it would really mean a lot to me if you gave it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. It does help more people find the show, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy. I like feeling warm and fuzzy. You can also support the show over at Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For as little as $1 a month, you get all the episodes earlier with better audio quality and patron voting rights. And what I mean by that is I do polls over there, which help guide the direction of the show. In fact, it will be closed by the time this episode comes out. But right now, I have a poll called It's the Summer of NES Venture, where I picked 4 NES games, all with the word adventure somewhere in the title. So the 4 up right now are Adventure Island, The Adventures of Bayou Billy, Adventures of Dino Riki, and Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So who knows which one is going to win, but if you want to help pick games like any of those 4, that's only for $1 a month. For $3 a month, you get all the stuff I mentioned prior, plus patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get all of that, everything I mentioned prior, plus 2 mini bonus episodes, which there are over 90 of at this point, so go check that out. And for $5 a month, you get everything. You get all the things I mentioned, before, plus access to my monthly movie podcast, which at the time this comes out is still going to be Still Family, which is my monthly Fast and Furious movie podcast where all the guests who join me aren't just friends, they're family. So you can find all of that over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. And that's it. That is all the time I have for you on this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all so much for listening. Tendo Man, thank you once again for joining me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. It was a pleasure being on here and yapping about Zelda for almost 2.5 hours.
It was a great time. You better believe you're going to be coming on for more Zelda if you're so inclined. So, but yeah, that's it. That is all the time I have for you today on Still Loading. Thank you once again. And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.